Chapter 538. Chu Yihan was just that ruthless outside the door. Jillian's heart was pounding in her throat. She had even pictured herself covered in blood, but the pain hadn't reached her. She cautiously opened her eyes. Beneath the dazzling torchlight, a woman's body lay on the ground in an odd posture. Minute Jiao. Chu Xiaotian was the first to react, rushing over to Minute Jiao. However, when he helped her up, Minute Jiao started to wail, "It hurts. Brother, it hurts so much. Ah, it hurts. B0XO. She didn't know where the force came from, but it sent her flying. She fell face first to the ground, and every bone in her body hurt as if it had been dismantled. It was a piercing pain. The strong wind that swept past Chu Changye made him look warily at the door of the medicine hut. Imperial uncle. Chu Chengye's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't sensed Chu Yihan's arrival at all. How powerful was his martial arts? He could suddenly appear in front of everyone and strike Minute Jiao. Chu Yihan's arrival caused the surrounding atmosphere to suddenly drop. His domineering aura made everyone involuntarily lower their heads. His cold gaze shifted to Chu Changye, and he asked coldly, "Who gave you the courage to intrude into the Marquise manor?" Chu Changye was unconvinced. He was a prince and now the temporary minister of justice. He was noble, yet Chu Yihan accused him of trespassing into Marquise manor. However, on the surface, he had no choice but to lower his head to Chu Yihan. "Imperial uncle, please forgive me. One heard from Sister Minute Jiao that the regional princess had been kidnapped by Su Yingxue, and my brother was also in trouble here. That's why I rushed over. After all, a member of the imperial family cannot be bullied in the Marquise manor." "No. That's right. It's fine if Imperial uncle doesn't support us, but why do you want to attack me?" Minute Jiao was supported by Chu Xiaotian and could only sit on the ground. Her legs were in so much pain that she had no strength at all. She didn't even know how many bones she had broken, but she hated him so much. Why did Chu Yihan hit her? Chu Yihan looked at Minute Jiao in disdain. "Are you worthy of being a member of the imperial family? From which imperial consort were you born? You are just a commoner's daughter. Imperial uncle, be careful with your words. My sister and one are of the same mother. Her status is noble. Of course, she is a member of the imperial family." Chu Xiaotian couldn't stand Chu Yihan's humiliation and stood up for Minute Jiao. Mochi reminded him, "Don't you know? Madame Sheng has been stripped of her imperial mandate and demoted to a commoner." Chu Xiaoshen's face turned pale. He didn't expect Chu Yihan to be so ruthless. He demoted his mother. He even hurt his sister. "Chu Changye, this place doesn't allow you to make any noise. Take your imperial guards and get out of my courtyard." Chu Yihan knew very well that Su Yingxue's surgery was not completed yet and she needed some peace. Chu Changye was unwilling. Su Yingxue's figure was still clearly visible through the window, but he couldn't see her again. He gritted his teeth and refused. "Imperial uncle, Su Yingxue is not the only one in this medicine hut. There is also cousin's wife, the regional princess. Imperial uncle should stand up for cousin and make Su Yingxue hand over regional princess." Even if Chu Yihan chased him away, he couldn't be chased away so easily. However, he had forgotten that Chu Yihan would never reason with him. There was a trace of hostility in his dark eyes. "Do you want to get lost yourself, or do you want me to do it? Imperial uncle, please calm down." Chu Xiaotian quickly stepped forward and grabbed Chu Chengye's arm. "Seventh brother, go out first. It's not a good time to disobey Imperial uncle." In terms of martial arts and power, a few of them were no match for Chu Yihan. It was better to recognize the situation. Chapter 539. It was her honor to hit her. Chu Chengye's heart was unwilling. It was just this last step, and he almost made Su Yingxue beg. Chu Yihan was detestable. Everyone was driven out of the courtyard. The medicine hut suddenly became quiet, not a sound to be heard. Yilan saw that Chu Yihan stayed behind and cautiously went to arrange things outside the courtyard. Although they had intruded to cause trouble, they were still descendants of the imperial family. Yilan had them all invited to the front hall and ordered tea to be served, treating them well. B0XO. Chu Yihan stood guard outside the medicine hut and sensed a trace of a stranger's presence. He called Mo Chi, someone nearby, go check. Mo Chi immediately summoned the secret guards. Zi Wei witnessed Chu Yihan's secret guards in action, chasing after the person who had been lurking all this time, heading towards the east of the city. Inside the house, Su Yingxue finished the surgery on Su Han. She breathed a long sigh of relief, covered Su Han with her clothes, and took off her mask. Saint Ron wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. This surgery was really difficult. There were hundreds of people outside, and they almost overturned your medicine hut. If Chu Yihan hadn't arrived in time, Su Han would still be in danger. Thankfully, Su Yingxue was amazing. Saint Ron said he would take care of Su Han for Su Yingxue and advised her to quickly deal with matters outside. There was probably a lot of trouble waiting for her outside the courtyard. Su Yingxue smiled and said, "Old man, thank you." "Bah. I'm a young man." Saint Ron pushed Su Han aside, rolling his eyes at her. Su Yingxue changed her clothes and went out. Under the moonlight, the man in the black robe made her heart throb slightly. Chu Yihan was as perfect as a statue, no matter where or when, no matter what angle one looked at him from. His slender figure was perfect, and his facial features were flawless under the moonlight. Every inch and every minute was carefully crafted by the heavens. He walked towards Su Yingxue and held her fair hands. He instantly frowned. "It's so cold." Su Yingxue was still mesmerized by his fairy-like face. When she came back to her senses, she smiled and asked, "The hands used for surgery, how could they be warm?" Chu Yihan immediately covered her hands and pressed them against his chest. Su Yingxue could feel the surging heat in his chest just by touching them. His heart was burning with an unknown temperature. Su Yingxue stayed in the room for 4 hours. She had heard half of what happened outside. At this moment, the medicine hut was empty. She asked, "Did you chase them all out?" "Yes." Chu Yihan nodded. "If it weren't for the fact that you still want to settle accounts with them one by one would have chased them all out of the Marquise Manor. Those who disturbed her peace deserved to die." Su Yingxue felt a strong warmth in her hands and left with Chu Yihan. Yilan was the servant girl she had raised, so she had already thoughtfully arranged for everyone. Chu Yihan was guarding the manor. Even if these people didn't want to wait, they had to wait obediently in the front hall. Seeing Su Yingxue come out, Chu Xiaotian couldn't wait to ask, "Su Yingxue, where is Su Han? Where was she? One want to bring her back to the residence." Su Yingxue glanced at her coldly, and her gaze landed on Yilan. She gently caressed Jilan's face. "Who hit you?" There were obvious fingerprints on her delicate little face. Yilan looked at Minute Jiao, who was sitting on the soft couch. Su Yingxue's gaze followed her, carrying a dark and vicious aura. Minute Jiao was so frightened that she trembled. "What are you trying to do?" "She's just a maid. It's her honor to be hit by me, the county lord." Chapter 540. Accountability. Su Yingxue walked up to Minute Jiao and without saying a word, she slapped her. "Being slapped by me is also your honor." Minute Jiao was stunned by the slap. Over the past few days, Su Yingxue had slapped her twice, both times holding her hand and hitting herself. This time, Su Yingxue personally struck her, and the force, it hurt. "Sob, brother." Minute Jiao could not retaliate against Su Yingxue, so she could only grab Chu Xiaoshen's arm and cry. Chu Xiaoshen's heart was already filled with anger, and now he was even more furious. "Su Yingxue, you've gone too far. B0XO. He couldn't help but express his anger towards Su Yingxue. Chu Yihan's cold voice came, "So what if she's gone too far?" "Imperial uncle, you." Chu Xiaoshen's anger was instantly blocked by him. Chu Yihan was backing Su Yingxue, making her fearless. But there was nothing he could do. "Su Yingxue, do you think you can do whatever you want just because your imperial uncle is backing you up? Elder brother's wife, the regional prince's mansion, you must hand her over." Chu Chongye knew he couldn't confront Chu Yihan directly. However, Chu Xiaotian was in the right. He didn't believe Chu Yihan could force Su Han to stay. Cousin just finished her surgery and is still resting. "I won't hand her over. Besides, 7th Prince, What right do you have to say that to me? Su Yingxue's slanted eyebrows were cold and filled with hostility. I am in charge of the Ministry of Justice. You trespassed into the regional prince's mansion and kidnapped princess. One will hold you accountable for every single thing. Chu Chengye gritted his teeth. What he hated the most was Su Yingxue being arrogant in front of him. How could she? This woman, who used to be submissive to him, was getting more and more powerful. She was almost trampling him under her feet. Highness was not kidnapped. Your Highness wants to hold her accountable, and I am willing to bear the responsibility. Highness is seriously ill. If she is still in the regional prince's mansion, she will die. It was me who asked Yingxue to bring Highness back. Su Dingwei immediately stood up to clarify for Su Yingxue. He hadn't been executed yet, but he had been standing naked on this cold night for a long time. His sturdy body was covered with scars from swords, spears, and halberds. They were all scars he had received on the battlefield and during training as a general. Nonsense. Don't tell me that my regional prince's mansion doesn't have a doctor. Do you believe that Su Yingxue is the only doctor in the whole of Jiangdu City? Chu Xiaotian shouted angrily. He had never said that he would leave Su Han in the lurch. He just wanted Su Han to comfort his mother. When his mother recovered, he would also cure Su Han. However, the Su family was hateful. If the regional prince's mansion is willing to treat Highness, why is Highness trapped in the mansion and let the bugs corrode her to such a serious extent? When Yingxue brought Highness back, she was covered in wounds. How are you going to explain this to me? Qin Wan couldn't care less and complained with tears in her eyes. She couldn't let her daughter be wronged and let others accuse Su Yingxue. Su Yingxue took out a pill and a set of clothes and asked someone to pass them to Su Dingwei. Su Dingwei took the medicine to stop the bleeding, but he didn't dare to put on his clothes. He stood firm. If the seventh prince wants to punish me, I will not resist. But today, I will not allow Highness to be taken away. He would rather be tortured by Chu Chengye. Chu Yihan moved his fingers. Mochi, let General Su get dressed. Mochi replied, yes. General Su put it on. Mochi walked to Su Dingwei with the clothes and said softly. Chapter 541. Chu Yihan was heartless to everyone. This, Su Dingwei was very surprised. He knew that Chu Yihan allowed him to wear clothes because he wanted to save him. However, he had never interacted with Chu Yihan before, so he felt a little heavy after receiving his favor. General Su, are you trying to disobey your Highness' orders by not wearing it? Mochi asked. I dare not. Su Dingwei immediately put on his clothes. B0XO. Compared to Chu Chengye, who had no choice but to submit to him, he was more in awe of Chu Yihan. The person they respected the most was Chu Yihan, the god of war of the great Cheng dynasty. Even if he wasn't your Highness, they would still obey him. Chu Chengye snorted and said unhappily, General Su, you're very obedient. If you won't listen to me, do you think you can listen to him? Every word spoken by Chu Yihan was accompanied by authority and coercion. He coldly commanded Chu Chengye, kneel. Chu Chengye's eyes widened. Why should one kneel? Even if Imperial Uncle wants to punish me, there must be a crime. Defying me is a crime. Chu Yihan's icy and menacing gaze pressed onto Chu Chengye. Or do you believe that just because I'm not in charge of the Ministry of Justice, one can't punish you? I won't kneel. Chu Chengye was defiant. Imperial Uncle is favoring one side. If I'm to administer corporal punishment to Su Dingwei, Imperial Uncle insists on me kneeling. There's no logic in this. A sinister smile curled on Chu Yihan's lips. Mochi, teach him some reasoning. Yes, Your Highness. Mochi unsheathed his sword and charged towards Chu Chengye. Each move was chilling, and Chu Chengye was forced into a confrontation with him in the courtyard. Chu Xiaoshan's heart sank as he witnessed Chu Chengye being pushed out and beaten by Chu Yihan. He contemplated that with Chu Yihan present, it might be challenging to take Su Han away. He cast a glance at the injured Minute Jiao and addressed Chu Yihan in a solemn tone, Imperial Uncle, Minute Jiao's injuries are not light. One will take her back to the residence for healing. As for my princess consort, Chu Xiaotian approached Su Yingxue, a hint of disgust in his eyes. I will personally come to bring her back to the residence. Wait. Su Yingxue halted him. Your Highness intruded into my Marquise manor and injured my uncle. Do you think you can just leave like this? Su Yingxue, what do you want? Minute Jiao, lifted by someone, was so furious that she wanted to bite someone. Minute Jiao, County Lord, dares to interrupt me? With your swollen face, are you still able to speak? Su Yingxue glared at her. Minute Jiao was so frightened that her heart trembled, nearly crying. She dared not speak to Su Yingxue again, tightly covering her face, afraid of being beaten again. Impatience filled Chu Xiaoshen's eyes. Su Yingxue, what else do you want? Your Highness needs to apologize to me and my uncle for trespassing into the Marquise manor and injuring my uncle. Su Yingxue fixed her gaze on Chu Xiaotian. Regardless of his identity, Su Yingxue was unafraid of others' reservations. If I don't, what do you want to do? It was indeed Chu Xiaoshen's fault for trespassing into the Marquise manor. Under other circumstances, he might have apologized. However, Su Yingxue's actions today had repeatedly trampled on his heart. He would never apologize to her. And Su Dingwei. Their Su family was not worthy of him bowing his head. If you don't apologize, I, Su Yingxue, guarantee that you, the Prince of the Yong'an County, will not be able to leave my Marquis of Marshall South's manor. Su Yingxue, though not as tall as Chu Xiaotian, exuded an aura much stronger than his. Even taller behind her was Chu Yihan. Chu Yihan's gaze was cold and emotionless towards anyone. Only when he looked at Su Yingxue did his gaze become as gentle as water. Chapter 542. Pinch her face. Cute. This also determined the fact that whoever had a conflict with Su Yingxue would be considered a dead person in Chu Yihan's eyes. Chu Xiaotian glanced outside at Chu Changye, who was brought to his knees by Mochi. He closed his eyes and trembled for a moment, then, facing Su Yingxue, he said with a solemn expression, "One apologize. I was impulsive, intruding into the Marquise manor, disturbing everyone in the Marquise manor." Su Yingxue barely acknowledged it. Chu Xiaotian also approached Su Dingwei, offering an apology. Su Dingwei was extremely reluctant to accept it. However, he didn't say much in the end. B0XO. Before leaving, Chu Xiaotian even addressed Su Dingwei and Qin Hannah and Wan are husband and wife. When I have the time, I will come back to bring her with me. Su Han couldn't stay in the Marquis of Marshall South's manor forever. Su Dingwei's heart was clouded, and Qin was even sobbing. Uncle, Aunt, it's already late. If you don't mind, you can go back to your manor. If it's not inconvenient, stay in the Marquis manor for a few more days. Sister just finished her operation and shouldn't move. I'll have Yilan take you to rest. Su Dingwei nodded, expressing gratitude for the trouble. Before leaving, he also bowed to Chu Yihan in thanks, but Chu Yihan just nodded without saying anything. While helping Su Dingwei to rest, Qin couldn't help but sigh. Ninth Prince is so cold, yet he cares deeply for Yingxue. He's much happier than Hannah. The thought of her daughter, who had become a regional princess but ended up in such a state, tore at Qin Wan's heart. In the courtyard, Mochi had already forced Chu Changye to kneel. Everyone had left. Su Yingxue watched Chu Changye kneeling in the courtyard. He was still struggling. Let me go. You servant. Release me. The seventh prince keeps calling him a servant, but you can't even defeat Mochi. What right do you have to call him a servant? Su Yingxue sneered. Mochi, throw out those who look down on you. Mochi raised his head. I will do as you say. After Mochi carried Chu Changye out, Su Yingxue finally realized something. She scratched her ears. Did I overstep my boundaries by ordering your Highness subordinates? Chu Yihan's confidence, ability, and status were not something many generals in the court could compare to. Mochi's obedience to her made her feel a little. He didn't cross the line. If he doesn't listen to your orders, then he would be crossing the line. Chu Yihan pinched Su Yingxue's cheeks, finding her even cuter. Just now, she was so fierce in front of everyone, making people afraid. Now that the two of them were alone, Her clear and beautiful eyes were especially weak. Yihan hugged her waist and pressed his forehead against her head. Old General Su is 100 miles away from Jiangdu City. He'll arrive in 2 days at most. Grandpa came back so quickly, but, Your Highness, you know so much. Could it be that there are secret guards following Grandpa every day and reporting his schedule to you? Su Yingxue pouted and asked. Yihan's secret guards were elites who could fight against 100 people alone. Wasn't this a little overkill? Yihan couldn't help but rub his lips against her face. If it weren't for the old general's old age, one would have asked him to return immediately. It wouldn't have taken so long. If Su Qingzhi had been younger, Yihan would have given him a military order to hurry back. However, the old general was old and walked slowly. It was not good for him to rush him. He could only wait patiently. However, the longer he waited, the more anxious he became. Chapter 543, Su Han's child is gone. Su Yingxue felt a pair of large hands on her waist, radiating a burning warmth as they caressed the softest part of her waist. Yihan's lips descended onto hers. Oh, the passionate kiss was both expected and somewhat unbearable. Your Highness, be gentle. Yihan pressed his lips against hers as if wanting to claim every inch of her. B0XO. When she felt a slight chill on her shoulder, she realized her shirt had been unbuttoned at some point, exposing her smooth skin to the air. She shivered, and Yihan promptly adjusted her clothing. The night quickly melted away, but the air carried a lingering scent of ambiguity. In Su Yingxue's dreams, Yihan's husky and seductive voice echoed. He said, Su Yingxue, I'm waiting for the day you become my princess. On that night, one will not let you off easily. Upon waking up, Su Yingxue found goosebumps all over her body. She couldn't shake the feeling that Yihan was somewhat intimidating last night. What did he have in mind for the night she became the princess? Did it mean spending the entire night in the bridal chamber? I can't handle this. Su Yingxue hurriedly shook her head, well aware that she probably didn't have the stamina for such activities. Miss hasn't had breakfast yet. Why can't you handle it? Are you feeling unwell? Yihan asked while carrying a basin of water to help Su Yingxue freshen up. Su Yingxue quickly dismissed the vivid scenes from her mind. I'm not feeling unwell. Have you visited my cousin? Miss Han has already woken up, but she's been crying. Mr. Wan forbids Madam from seeing Miss Han again to prevent her tears from reopening the wound, Yihan truthfully reported. Su Yingxue nodded in agreement. Saint Wan made the right decision. Su Han's emotional state was too fragile, and touching her wound wouldn't aid in her recovery. After getting ready, Su Yingxue first comforted Qin Wn before heading to the medicine hut to check on Su Han. The well-arranged and quiet medicine hut was conducive to Su Han's recovery. Su Yingxue had brought some spiritual spring water from the Medicine King Valley for Su Han to drink, hoping it would expedite her healing. However, Su Yingxue couldn't help but be concerned about Su Han's wound. Su Yingxue explained, Cousin, even though one don't perform many surgeries, I am meticulous. I cut into your abdomen, and no matter what, it will leave a scar. Sister, I'm not blaming you. Scars are inevitable. We can repair it in the future. What concerns me is my child. Tears welled up in Su Han's red and swollen eyes once more. Su Yingxue's heart sank. It seemed she couldn't keep the truth from Su Han. Even with the anesthetic given by Saint Wan, Su Han still felt the moment the baby was taken out of her body. Su Han sobbed. When the doctor first told me I was pregnant, I didn't feel anything. I didn't even know how to be a mother. But later, one felt something in my stomach, and I started to be vigilant. After I fell into the water, you all said it was a bug, and I became even more afraid. But when it left my body, one realized. I didn't even get the chance to look at it before losing it completely. Su Yingxue was also deeply saddened. She couldn't bear to tell Su Han that the fetus was in a terrible state and that this operation would make it difficult for Su Han to conceive again. Sister, can one still have another child in the future? Chapter 544, Not every Su sister could be like Su Yingxue. Su Han grasped Su Yingxue's hand, catching Su Yingxue off guard. She hadn't even thought about how to fabricate an excuse yet. There will be a child, sister. Sister, you are decisive, not someone who hesitates. Su Han sighed heavily. Su Yingxue's hesitation confirmed her suspicions that Su Han wouldn't have another child. Su Yingxue sighed softly. Cousin, sometimes you don't have to be so wise. Su Han, who managed to marry into wealth due to her intelligence and perceptiveness, now seemed to suffer from the backlash of her intelligence and perceptiveness. Updated on B0x0vel. I've been like this since I was young, now, and in the future. Su Han smiled bitterly. Cousin, have you thought about what to do in the future? Su Yingxue was very surprised. Su Han had only rested for one night after the surgery. Su Han leaned against the headboard and said calmly, this time, I got into big trouble to save my life. My mother-in-law is injured, and Minute Jiao will probably hate me to the bone. I'm afraid that my life won't be as good as before when I return to the prince's mansion. Sister, are you going back? Su Yingxue subconsciously wanted to object. Su Han smiled bitterly. What can I do if I don't go back? She looked at Su Yingxue, her eyes overflowing with envy. If one had medical skills like you, I wouldn't have to go back. If one had Miss Jinyan's courage to survive, one wouldn't have to return to the prince's mansion. However, one have a family to support. If I were to be divorced and return to my family, not only would it be a disgrace to my family, but it would also implicate my younger siblings. How could their future be ruined because of me? Sister, you can, Su Yingxue blurted out. Su Han didn't have to go back. However, her mind spun quickly, and she felt that if she said it rashly, it would be a little childish. As Su Han had said, she was different from her and sister Jinyang. She could rely on her own hands to shut up everyone who was targeting her. Sister Jinyang did not have a family behind her, she did not have anyone to rely on, and she did not have anyone to drag her down. She only needed to work hard on her own. However, Su Han was different. She had a family mission and her identity was restricted. If she was divorced, she would be sad if she didn't care about her family. Su Yingxue did not want to interfere in her matters. I think that cousin must have thought everything through before she said that. Su Han managed the prince's mansion, and her vision and thoughts were much more profound than hers. But sister need not rush back. Grandfather will be back in 2 days. Sister is recuperating in the Marquise Manor. When grandfather returns, you should accompany him more. I believe Chu Xiaotian and the regional prince's mansion will not be able to say anything about you. Su Yingxue patted Su Han's hand. Su Han was pleasantly surprised. Grandpa. That's great. Su Yingxue saw the gratified expression on her face and knew that her grandfather's backing could make her feel much more at ease. Even if she had to return to the regional prince's mansion to suffer in the future, at least she would not feel so lonely and helpless in her heart. Su Yingxue went out. She thought that Su Han would recuperate in the Marquise Manor. However, as soon as she left, Qingwan came over with Yihan. In front of Su Dingwei, Qingwan didn't dare to cry or speak to Su Han sincerely. Now that it was only the mother and daughter, Qingwan couldn't hold back her tears anymore. My poor daughter, this surgery saved your life, but it also ruined the rest of your life. Mother, please don't say that. Everything sister did was for my good. However, not everyone in the Su family can be as free and easy as her. Su Han smiled bitterly. Chapter 545. Old General Su was stalling for time. She was very grateful for Su Yingxue's good intentions, but she couldn't endure it. In the end, she had to use the rest of her life to make amends. Mother, the maid in the prince's mansion was probably driven away by Minute Jiao. Please give Yihan to me, so that I can have someone trustworthy by my side. Su Han, still recovering from her injuries, was already making plans for the future. Her current situation didn't allow her to rest peacefully. In the prince's mansion of Yong'an County, when Chu Xiaotian brought Minute Jiao back, the household was in chaos. He had not slept the entire night. The old regional prince couldn't console Madame Sheng, and after attempting to persuade Minute Jiao without success, he turned to Chu Xiaotian. Son, when will you bring the daughter-in-law back? She has always managed the affairs of the prince's mansion. Only she can maintain balance. Updated on B0x0vel. The old regional prince was getting a headache. While Chu Xiaotian could handle stewardship after inheriting the title, managing the numerous women in the backyard was proving to be tiresome. His wife's tsundere temperament made things even more challenging. Chu Xiaotian, satisfied with Su Han from the first moment he saw her, had handed over the mansion's authority directly to her. Su Han had managed things efficiently for years, never disappointing. However, he hadn't expected his wife and daughter to misbehave so much. Chu Xiaoshan's eyes were now dark circles. He wasn't concerned about the mansion's affairs but about Su Han, who had always been obedient, now defying him. She had defied him several times. He had never said he wouldn't treat her, yet she believed Su Yingxue and distrusted him, her husband who shared the same bed. He loved her so much. How could she treat him like this? Dad, I will bring her back. Tell Mom and sister that Su Han will come back and apologize to them. Chu Xiaoshan's expression darkened. He knew Su Han couldn't escape him. Well, forget it. As long as she comes back, there's no need for an apology. The old regional prince understood that it wasn't Su Han's fault. It was his wife and daughter who were causing trouble. Su Han had already shown remarkable tolerance. Outside Jiangdu City, a massive army of tens of thousands marched forward in a disciplined formation. However, a lone rider left the army like a shooting star in the night sky. An elderly man, sitting on a robust horse, with white hair and beard, wrinkles visible in the dark, looked towards the city gate. Waving his hand, he ordered, "Set up camp here, enter the city tomorrow." Set up camp here, enter the city tomorrow. The order spread through the entire army by horseback scouts. Su Wei, the deputy general, asked from behind him, "General, the city gate is close. Although it's late, you could return directly to the Marquise Manor." Despite Su Qingzhi's age, his physique allowed him to ride back without any issues. Expressionless, Su Qingzhi instructed, "Set up camp." Su Wei refrained from further questions. After the tent was set up, Su Wei thought Su Qingzhi would rest early to prepare for entering the city the next day. However, Su Qingzhi called him in and said, "Enter the city later tomorrow. If you can delay, another day would be even better." Chapter 546. Chu Yihan couldn't hold it in anymore. Still delaying? Su Wei was somewhat surprised. The 9th prince asked the old general to come back a few months ago. During the half-month journey back to the court, the prince's secret guards sent daily reports, urging you to return early. Are you not wanting to accept Chu Yihan's kindness? Su Wei, with many years of military experience, had heard of Chu Yihan but had never seen him care about any general in the court as much as Su Qingzhi. Wouldn't it be inappropriate to reject Chu Yihan's kindness? However, Su Qingzhi just coldly snorted, offering unnecessary courtesy is either deceitful or thieving. But Hez the 9th prince. What harmful intentions could the 9th prince have? Su Wei couldn't comprehend. Updated on B0x0vel. Su Qingzhi touched his sword, his eyes sharp and said, "One know him better than you. This man is Heartless. In the past 6 months, he has made significant moves and sent secret guards daily to report his schedule. He must be hiding something." He didn't mind making the 9th prince anxious. In Jiangdu City, Chu Yihan received a secret report that Su Qingzhi was already outside the city but had not entered immediately. Chu Yihan frowned and said, "Mochi, prepare the horse. I will personally go outside the city to welcome the old general. Your Highness, it's already past midnight. If we go at this time, the old general will be resting, right?" Mochi felt that his cold and restrained master couldn't hold it any longer. They're already outside the city, but why don't they enter? Didn't the old general want to reunite with his family as soon as possible? Didn't the secret guards inform the old general that Su Dingwei and Qin Wan were also in the Marquise Manor? Chu Yihan was puzzled. Mochi quickly defended the secret guards, "I've said it. How could they dare to neglect the master's orders? I think the old general must be tired after such a long journey. Seeing that they are already at the door, he's not in a hurry, so he wants to take a rest before coming in, right? Yihan thought it made sense. He put down the news brought by the secret guard. I've lost my sense of propriety. If he went out of the city now, he would inevitably startle Qingzhi and might leave a bad impression on him. This would not do. He wanted to maintain his image in Qingzhi's heart as the perfect god of war of the great Cheng dynasty. In the Marquise manor, Yingxue was also preparing late at night to welcome Qingzhi. Yihan looked at Yingxue, who was so busy that she was unwilling to rest. She teased, "Miss is always calm and steady in everything you do. Now that master is coming back, you're as anxious as a child." Yingxue was still holding an ornament in her hand. "You haven't seen grandfather for such a long time. Don't you miss him?" Yingxue thought desperately. After all, in the eyes of others, her grandfather had only been on the battlefield for a few years, but to her, she and her grandfather had already been separated for a lifetime. In her entire life, she had never seen her grandfather properly, leaned into his arms, and acted coquettishly. Yihan covered her mouth and laughed. "Yes, one Miss Master too. But I wonder, between Miss and the 9th Prince, who longs for Master more?" "Hiss, your words are getting worse and worse." Yingxue chased after Yihan angrily. Yihan was grabbed by Yingxue. Yingxue tickled her until she begged for mercy. "It's my fault, it's my fault. Miss, you miss Master the most. Look at you, still talking nonsense." Yingxue was playing happily with her. Saint Juan came over with a dark face. "Yingxue, are all your patients this reckless?" Suhan had just finished the surgery and she was already out of bed. Forget about getting off the bed, she even ran away. Does she want to go to the heavens? Chapter 547, Suhan's Grievance. What? Cousin ran away. Yingxue's heart skipped a beat. She searched the Marquise manor but couldn't find Suhan. Dingwei and Qin Wan had already returned to the manor. Yihan asked the guard at Marquise manor and only then did she know, Miss Han just got on the carriage and left. Look. They are heading towards the prince's mansion of Yong'an County. The regional prince's mansion, Yingxue frowned. Saint Juan scoffed in disdain. You've worked so hard to save people, but they still don't treat their lives as their own. What's the use? Updated on B0x0vel.com. He clapped his hands and disregarded the Su family's affairs. He went to the medicine hut to continue fiddling with the things he and Yingxue were studying. At the prince's mansion in Yong'an County, Suhan got out of the car and returned to her courtyard. Chu Xiaotian was still sleeping. He used to be busy with work, and when he returned home, he was exhausted. In addition, he was injured yesterday, and his hands and face were injured. Now, he looked even more exhausted. Chu Xiaotian pinched his eyebrows. He knew that Suhan would come back. Now that he saw her, his expression was cold as he grabbed her wrist. You finally decided to come back. Suhan stumbled as he pulled her wrist, her already unsteady steps making her as fragile as a sheet of paper. Yihan hurriedly assisted her, stabilizing her stance. Your Highness, please be gentle. Miss underwent surgery just yesterday, and the scar on her abdomen hasn't healed. She can't endure such force, Yihan anxiously advised. Miss. Can't endure? Chu Xiaoshan's voice carried a mocking tone. She is my princess consort, a woman from the prince's mansion of Yong'an County. What could she possibly not endure? He fixed a fierce gaze on Suhan. After several years of marriage, how could one not know about your fragile health? Other than your sister, Yingxue, no one in the world seems able to cure you, is that right? Suhan, weakened by illness, spoke in a hoarse voice. Your Highness, this matter is intricate. Highness needs to explain it to you thoroughly. What do you mean? Are you still trying to frame my mother and sister for this? The entire prince's mansion of Yong'an County has wronged you, and you're the only one who has been wronged, aren't you? Chu Xiaotian roared crazily, venting all the humiliation he had suffered last night on Suhan. Suhan held back her tears and listened to his scolding, even though his words were getting more and more harsh and forceful. Why are you silent? Aren't you usually eloquent? The entire mansion is well managed. How much distress did my mother cause you? You went to the Su family to complain, instigating your father to attack me, and even had your sister come to injure my mother and sister. He tightened his grip on Su Han's wrist, increasing the force as if wanting to crush her. Without my consent, you went to Su Yingxue for surgery. Who gave you the audacity? Su Han, speak. Who gave you the audacity? Your Highness, please don't treat Miss like this. Your Highness, please stop. Yihan attempted to intervene, but Chu Xiaotian forcefully pushed her away. Chu Xiaotian had been forcing Su Han. Seeing her crying, he felt a mix of pity and anger. How dare you cry? My mother and sister are seriously ill and bedridden, and the mansion is in chaos. All because of you. Su Han, how dare you cry? He angrily seized Su Han, who seemed like a doll in his grasp. From the beginning to the end, she did not dare to look up at him. Only when Chu Xiaotian forced her did Su Han look up with tears in her eyes. Her eyes were full of tears. She choked and said, Your Highness, all you do is blame Hannah without showing any concern. Don't you want to ask how difficult it was for me when one was sick, how painful the surgery was? Including now. My wounds. Chapter 548. Old General Su has arrived outside the city. Su Han untied her belt and lifted her top. Under her thin white undershirt, a hideous scar could be seen on her fair skin. Chu Xiaotian couldn't help but feel a pang of heartache. How could a wound so long and deep on such a delicate body not be painful? Yet, how could her pain compare to the humiliation he endured yesterday? Humph. As a woman, you dared to make decisions on your own, causing such injuries. According to the 7 rules, I could divorce you on the grounds of suffering from a serious illness. Put on your clothes properly to avoid dirtying my eyes. Chu Xiaotian turned away. If he didn't look, he wouldn't take any more. Updated on B0x0vel.com. If your Highness doesn't look, this scar will remain. I'm afraid it won't disappear in the future. Su Han quivered as she let out a breath. Remain in the future? Su Han, are you trying to humiliate me? You've been a princess for too long, and you've forgotten your original identity. Chu Xiaoshan's expression turned ferocious, making Su Han feel like she was facing a stranger. She had never imagined that her loving husband would have such a demeanor after an incident. Su Han lowered her head and remained silent. Her silence was a form of unspoken resistance. In Chu Xiaoshan's eyes, this was stubbornness. She stubbornly believed she had done nothing wrong. However, in his eyes, Su Han was entirely in the wrong. Now that you're back, fulfill your duties as a princess properly. Chu Xiaotian dragged Su Han out, denying her a chance to catch her breath. Before Su Han's return, she had anticipated that her days in the prince's mansion wouldn't be easy. Yet, she never expected Chu Xiaotian to be this cruel. Outside Jiangdu City, the army had rested for a night. Su Wei entered the tent and reported to Su Qingzhi, General, the 9th prince has sent someone to greet you. When will you enter the city? Su Qingzhi raised his thick black eyebrows. What could it be that made him so anxious? Su Qingzhi found it increasingly challenging to understand Chu Yihan. How is the situation in the Marquise Manor? Su Qingzhi temporarily set aside thoughts about Chu Yihan. Not having returned for several years, he missed his children even more. Before returning, he received a letter from Su Hao, stating that he had been appointed as a general and stationed at Bamboo Leaf Pass. He was engaged to a woman named Wu Jinyang. Regarding the household, Su Yingxue had been taking care of it on his behalf. Su Hao's engagement wasn't surprising, but what surprised him was that the authority of the Marquise Manor had fallen into the hands of Su Yingxue. Yingxue, this child, has been quick-tempered since childhood. To see her manage the Marquise Manor so efficiently in such a short time is truly surprising. Su Qingzhi's demeanor was stern, but when he spoke of Su Yingxue, his eyes showed love and pity. He regretted that Su Yingxue was a girl back then, unable to accompany him to battles like Su Hao. Instead, she could only be pampered at home. Yet, a child without a mother to accompany her would inevitably lag. He felt a sense of indebtedness. General, I have gathered some information about the Marquise Manor. Would you like to hear it? Su Wei looked conflicted. Su Qingzhi waved his hand. Tell me. Approaching Su Qingzhi, Su Wei whispered into his ear. At the end of his statement, he expressed some regret. After all, Miss Euro is a descendant of the Marquise Manor. It's a pity she has passed away. A hint of sorrow crossed Su Qingzhi's face, but it vanished in an instant as he regained his cold and solemn demeanor. The Su family's offspring have always been upright and straightforward. Devious and despicable individuals are not worthy of being part of the Su family. As for the despicable people raised by the Su family, death is not worth regretting. Chapter 549, Su Qingzhi's caution defeated in the battle, there was no regret to speak of. Is General entering the city today? Su Wei asked a crucial question. Returning to the capital with over 10,000 troops was no trivial matter. If delayed, it might lead to criticism. You go into the palace alone, pay respects to the emperor, and see his attitude. Su Qingzhi held his waist knife, his eyes cautious. Sending Su Wei ahead, Su Qingzhi's heart felt heavy. He feared that Chu Yihan had other intentions and was more afraid of the potential conflict between him and the emperor. Thus, he hesitated to enter the city easily. Updated on B0x0vel. Su Yingxue, waiting in the mansion all day, didn't receive Su Qingzhi's return. The messenger she sent from the Marquise Manor reported, Miss, the old general, and the troops are outside the city but haven't entered. Why haven't they entered? Su Yingxue's beautiful face showed a trace of anxiety. I don't know, the messenger replied. Su Yingxue waved her hand, dismissing him. Maybe master has other arrangements. Miss, please be patient, Yihan softly advised. This servant is a bit worried about Miss Han. Since she returned to the regional prince's mansion, there has been no news all day. We don't know how her wound is. Su Yingxue was also worried. However, she understood the situation. Su Han chose to return to the regional prince's mansion, and no one forced her. She must have thought it through before going back. But it's a pity. Cousin's health is weak. If she doesn't get proper rest, it may be even harder for her to recover in the future. Su Yingxue had considered attacking the regional prince's mansion again, but it wouldn't be good for Su Han. Not everyone could make others fear them even after being beaten. So, she patiently waited for her grandfather's return. Su Qingzhi, receiving Chu Mingyuan's order, reorganized the army outside the city. He did not need to bring the troops back to the city, returning alone was sufficient. Chu Mingyuan's edict also mentioned a welcoming banquet and a nationwide celebration. However, Su Qingzhi declined, writing a letter to Chu Mingyuan and asking Su Wei to deliver it. No need for the welcoming banquet. I should return directly to the manor, Su Qingzhi sighed in relief. Su Wei chuckled, the emperor is not as considerate as the 9th prince. He knows you don't care about superficial courtesies. You only want to reunite with your family. Chu Yihan had been helping him handle miscellaneous matters since the border, allowing him to return home sooner. Su Qingzhi thanked him but remained cautious. The 9th prince is cold and heartless, unfathomable. Although I entrusted him with a task before the expedition, his recent actions are strange. I have to be careful. He would be as careful as possible. The next day, Su Qingzhi left a few deputies and returned to the city with Su Wei. Su Wei hadn't seen the bustling Jiangdu city for a long time, and he was very emotional. He saw that many people were coming and going on Vermilion Bird Street, and there was a long line. It was a clinic. He commented, General, look. There are many clinics in Jiangdu city. One haven't seen so many people queuing up for medical treatment in years. Su Qingzhi nodded. This sight reminded him of a past event. In the past, he supported Long Shuli to establish a clinic. Once opened, the clinic drew long queues of patients seeking Long Shuli's treatment. At that time, Long Shuli didn't even have time to go home for meals. Chapter 550, Amazing, my granddaughter indeed, it got busy. As he walked past the entrance of the clinic and saw the vigorous inscription Tongchang Medical Center on the plaque, he suddenly pulled the reins and stopped. This clinic. Isn't it Longshuli's? General, aren't you going back to the manor? Su Wei still held a horse, puzzled by Su Qingji's sudden stop. Recalling Longshuli, Su Qingzhi felt a twinge and decided to dismount and take a look. Upted on BX0vel. CM both Su Qingzhi and Su Wei, clad in armor, exuded a remarkable presence. Especially Su Qingzhi, with his white hair and beard, yet vigorous and towering like a mountain, his eyes sharp as swords and lightning. The clinic's patients kept their distance upon seeing him as if a single glance could freeze their breath. Manager Qi, alerted by the report of 2 armored visitors, promptly came out to welcome them. Seeing Su Qingzhi, he couldn't help but show deep respect. Generals, are you here for medical treatment? Which doctor would you like to consult? Su Wei intended to explain that they were just here to look around, not seek medical attention. However, when Su Qingzhi noticed a doctor's sign hanging outside a treatment room, bearing Su Yingxue's name, he inquired, pointing towards the room, which doctor is in there? Oh, that's our shop owner, Dr. Su's treatment room. However, today being the 15th, Dr. Su is offering free treatment only to women. I'm afraid you won't be able to see Dr. Su today, General. If needed, other doctors are available. Manager Qi elaborated, providing Su Qingzhi with detailed information. Softened by the realization that Su Yingxue was like her mother, Su Qingzhi mused, as expected, just like her mother. Pity for women across the world. I don't seek treatment but wish to see Dr. Su. Su Qingzhi pointed to Su Yingxue's treatment room. Finding the request peculiar, Manager Qi cautiously inquired, General, what is your relationship with Dr. Su? Why specifically see Dr. Su alone? Su Qingzhi chuckled, my surname is also Su. Surname Su, Manager Qi recalled something, suddenly understanding. Could it be old General Su? Su Yingxue's grandfather? Remembering Su Yingxue mentioning that her grandfather, old General Su, was on his way back to the capital, Su Qingzhi gestured for discretion. He didn't want to disturb Su Yingxue, just wanting to catch a glimpse of her. Manager Qi, respectful and careful, promptly led Su Qingzhi to a partitioned space in Su Yingxue's treatment room, offering tea and snacks. Old General, please wait. This is Miss Treatment Room next door. After she finishes with this patient, I'll invite her to meet you. Miss misses you greatly. Unexpectedly, you came to the clinic first. Su Qingzhi hadn't anticipated that, after years of absence from Jiangdu City, he would visit Su Yingxue's clinic first. As Su Yingxue sat at the table, her silhouette reflected on the window frame, displaying her upright and calm demeanor. Occasionally, her cold voice reached through the window cracks. If you conceal your illness, it will affect my prescription. If the medication goes awry, delaying treatment, don't blame the doctor for being irresponsible. All right, Dr. Su, I did indeed have that. Okay, understood. Go get the medicine. After completing a prescription, Su Yingxue couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. She had learned from Zi Wei how to discern someone's location by sound. She found it to be somewhat effective. However, when she attempted to listen, there was complete silence. Soon, the next patient arrived, and she focused on attending to them. Separated by a wall, Su Qingzhi and Su Wei stood at a distance. Chapter 551. Grandpa came back, she cried. Su Wei held his breath for a long moment, while Su Qingzhi moved to another room and sat down. Only then did he dare to exhale. Eldest young Miss skills have truly grown. Her medical expertise is so exquisite, and we nearly got caught by her. Su Qingzhi felt a surge of pride. Why don't you see whose granddaughter she is? Su Wei smiled. General, you've been concerned about Miss at the border these past years. Now, you can rest assured, right? Miss can manage such a large clinic, and she can even identify locations by sound. Her martial skills must have improved greatly. She's not someone to be trifled with. Su Qingji's face, wrinkled with age, raised his eyebrows. When have one ever been worried? Su Wei was speechless. Upted on BX0vel. CM General, you're quite a bit of a show-off, Su Wei thought. After Su Yingxue finished attending to the last patient, it was already late. She instructed Manager Qi to have someone watch over the female patient for the night. Concerned for her safety returning home so late, she even arranged for her carriage to take the patient home. Manager Qi sighed softly. Miss always thinks of the patients. It's late, and you should return to the Marquise Manor. I'm not afraid. Manager Qi, you should rest too. Su Yingxue stretched lazily and suddenly felt a powerful aura approaching. Su Qingji's aged voice sounded particularly resolute. Indeed, you are my granddaughter. Just a night road like this, there's nothing to fear. Su Yingxue was stunned. Her blood momentarily chilled, then immediately boiled like flames. Her lips quivered. Grandpa. Su Qingzhi, clad in armor, looked strikingly heroic despite his age. His steps remained as steady as ever. Su Yingxue rushed into his embrace, and he caught her firmly, patting her back. Despite his stern demeanor, his eyes softened with affection. There, be good. His large hand gently patted Su Yingxue's back. He was delighted to see her longing for him. But then he heard sobbing from his embrace. Grandfather, you're finally back. My grandfather. Su Yingxue couldn't hold back her tears. Emotions surged within her, releasing the pent-up grievances and hatred she had harbored for so long. Grandfather, I'm sorry. I was foolish. It's all my fault. It's all because of me, Su Yingxue cried out emotionally. In her past life, her grandfather had been killed because of her. Even in his final moments, her grandfather had been worried about her. She had wasted over a decade of her grandfather's love. What's wrong? You've already surprised me. Su Qingzhi cradled Su Yingxue's face. She cried like a kitten, a hint of her mischievous childhood evident. But from what he had observed during the day, she was composed and skilled in medicine, vastly different from before he left. I still remember when you were this tall, wearing a pink dress, pouting unhappily, saying if one didn't take you, you wouldn't want me anymore. Su Qingzhi reminisced, his deep eyes tinged with red. Su Yingxue looked at Su Qingji's palm, barely reaching her shoulder. She squatted, using her head to support his hand, then stood tall and proclaimed, now I'm this tall. Yes, you've grown so fast. And so beautiful. Su Qingzhi sighed deeply. You're just like your mother, both devastatingly beautiful. Chapter 552. Tame. A wild horse. Old General was previously worried about mismarriage. Now that Miss is so outstanding, I'm sure all the nobles in Jiangdu City would be fighting to be your husband. Su Wei chuckled behind Su Qingzhi. Su Qingji's face darkened, his voice stern. Nonsense. Do they think they can marry my granddaughter just because they want to? He couldn't bear to see Su Yingxue married off. Let her stay for 2 more years. Grandfather, one can't bear to get married. I want to always be with you. Upted on BX0vel. CM Su Yingxue held onto Su Qingji's arm passionately. To her, this was a reunion with her grandfather who had been brought back from the dead. She had been in a trance for a lifetime before finally obtaining this happiness, so she cherished it dearly. Su Qingzhi led her out. There weren't many people on the streets. He and Su Wei each had a mount. Su Wei even led a horse. Miss, this is a wild horse that the old general tamed on the road. It has a strong temperament, but it's very vigorous and can travel thousands of miles. The old general originally planned to give it to you, but it hasn't been trained yet. You can ride my horse first. One will lead it back to the Marquise Manor. Su Yingxue approached the black horse and examined it closely. Its limbs were exceptionally sturdy, its coat pure black and shiny, with only a white patch on its head. Under the moonlight, it stood out. Is she Black Narcissus? Su Yingxue's eyes lit up. In her previous life, her grandfather had brought back such a horse and wanted to give it to her, but she had fallen off it once and refused to take it. Su Qingzhi said it was a rare horse and asked Su Yingxue to try taming it again. However, Su Yingxue was impatient and couldn't stand her siblings scheming. Such a fine horse was taken by Su Jinxuan. Taking the reins from Su Wei, Su Yingxue smiled at Su Qingzhi. Thank you, grandfather. Su Yingxue pondered how to tame the horse, but when she turned around, she noticed Su Qingzhi looking at her strangely. You. How did you know to call her Black Narcissus? This was the name he had thought of for the horse after taming it. It wasn't strange that Su Wei knew, but it was Su Yingxue's first time seeing the horse today. How would she know? Su Wei was also puzzled. Miss, why did you call her Black Narcissus? Their thoughts were too coincidental, weren't they? Well, the moon is bright tonight. She's dark but with a white patch on her head. It reminded me of daffodils. Su Yingxue chuckled. To avoid being seen through by her grandfather, she held the reins and mounted the horse. Black Narcissus was a horse with a strong temper and intelligence. Su Yingxue remembered from her past life that Su Jinxuan had struggled to tame this horse. Due to her ability to discern a person's capabilities, if she sensed that a person wasn't capable enough or had malicious intentions, she wouldn't submit. Even if she submitted temporarily, she would eventually throw the rider off. In her past life, Black Narcissus had briefly been Su Jinxuan's mount. However, during a battle, she threw Su Jinxuan off and was killed on the spot. Once Su Yingxue mounted the horse, Black Narcissus neighed and raised its front hooves, seemingly displeased with her. It galloped swiftly, attempting to throw Su Yingxue off. Su Wei was terrified. Miss, this horse hasn't been trained yet. It's dangerous. Su Qingzhi stood still, his expression calm. It's unnecessary. Yingxue will surely tame Black Narcissus. Su Qingzhi's gaze was deep as he watched Su Yingxue train the horse under the moonlight. Without any protective gear on its back and only the reins in her hands, Su Yingxue was nearly thrown off several times. But gradually, Black Narcissus calmed down. Though panting heavily, she no longer attempted to throw Su Yingxue off. Chapter 553, Virtue is not worthy of position, and will not be tolerated. Su Yingxue held onto the reins and rode back to Su Qingzhi's side. A smug smile adorned her picturesque face. Grandfather, I've tamed it. Let's go home. Good. Su Qingzhi smiled heroically. As expected of Shuli's daughter, as expected of the descendant of the Su family. It made him proud. Su Qingzhi and Su Yingxue returned to the manor in the starry night. Most of the people in the Marquise manor had already rested. Su Qingzhi did not care about his appearance and did not need any grandeur. After entering the manor to change, he asked Su Yingxue to accompany him to the ancestral hall. Upted on BX0vel. CM in the ancestral hall, Su Qingzhi looked at the incense that continued to burn. He instructed Su Yingxue, go and burn an incense stick for your mother on behalf of grandfather. Yes, grandfather. Su Yingxue lit the incense and knelt on the ground. She kowtowed 3 times and lit the incense for her mother. Although she had never met her mother, she had heard that her grandfather liked her mother very much and had always doted on her like his own daughter. Su Hao had told her that when her mother passed away, her grandfather was so sad that he fell ill for a long time. Su Qingzhi looked at Long Shuli's memorial tablet with a complicated expression. He didn't know who he was talking to, or perhaps he was murmuring to himself, "My child, have you gone back yet? How have you been over there all these years? Did her father love her? Was life going well? Grandfather, what are you talking about?" Su Yingxue took the cloak from Jillian's hands and draped it over Su Qingzhi. Su Qingzhi retracted the longing and regret in his eyes and walked out of the ancestral hall with Su Yingxue's help. The two of them had a good chat, and Su Qingzhi roughly understood what kind of changes Su Yingxue had experienced in the past half a year. Su Qingzhi stopped for a moment when he passed by Sunset Court. Su Yingxue pursed her lips. Grandfather, will you blame me? She had avenged herself by killing Liu Shulan and leaving Su Yura's corpse incomplete. She had no regrets, but her grandfather would probably take into account that she was still a descendant of the Marquise manor, right? You did the right thing. In just an instant, Su Qingzhi threw away the heartache in his eyes and replaced it with a cold and stern expression. If the children of my Marquise manor behave like this, they are not worthy of being the descendants of my Marquis manor. Their deaths are not worth regretting. He valued character and ability above everything else. Even if they were his grandchildren, if they were not worthy, he would not tolerate them. Even if she wasn't a descendant of the Marquise manor, but someone like Long Shuli, who had noble morals and outstanding abilities, he would still treat her like his own daughter. He would give her the best of the Marquise manor and everything he had for her son and daughter. Su Yingxue supported Su Qingzhi and continued walking forward. In Sunset Court, a pair of malicious eyes were filled with hatred. Old thing, 111 kill your Su Yingxue sooner or later. To avenge his sister and mother, saying that they were not worthy, he would personally overturn this Marquis of Marshall South's manor and destroy everything they protected and cared about. Su Yingxue felt that she had endless things to say to Su Qingzhi. When she brought him to the medicine hut, she told him that she was going to perform the surgery for Su Han. How is Highness' body now? Even though Su Dingheng had inherited the title a few years ago and the branch manor had become independent, he still missed his grandchildren. Su Yingxue's eyes turned solemn. I haven't heard from cousin these few days. I've already taught the people of the prince's mansion of Yong'an County a lesson. Now, it's not good for me to go to visit them again. Otherwise, cousin's life will be even worse. She wasn't the daughter-in-law of the prince's mansion of Yong'an County, so she couldn't understand Su Han's suffering. Chapter 554. Are you close to your Highness? Let's pick a day and have Hannah come back to see me. My granddaughter shouldn't be underestimated. Su Qingzhi stroked his beard in anger. Their Su family may not be from an imperial family, but as the Defender Great General and the Marquis of Marshall South's manor, they were not to be trifled with. Su Yingxue had a brilliant idea. How about we organize a welcome banquet for grandfather? By then, sister can come to see grandfather in a dignified manner. Su Qingzhi looked concerned. The emperor wanted to host a welcome banquet for me before, but I declined. If we hold a grand event now, it might upset the emperor. Considering what Su Yingxue had told him about her clashes with Chu Changye, he worried that it could become a weapon against the Su family. Don't worry, grandfather. I'll only arrange a family banquet. Well, say it's because you miss your family and want to reunite. This way, my sister can come too. And for the sake of face, the regional prince must accompany her. Then, grandfather can give him a good talking to. Su Yingxue blinked, exuding a clever and adorable charm. Organizing a family banquet would disguise their intentions, pacify Chu Mingyuan, avoid excessive attention from the court, and provide an opportunity for Su Han to return with Chu Xiaotian, allowing grandfather to support her. Su Qingzhi laughed heartily. You're becoming more and more like your mother, brave and strategic. It was the bloodline of their Su family. Su Yingxue was extremely proud of herself, but she did not expect that Su Qingzhi's next question would make her not know how to answer. You've been getting close to the 9th prince lately. What's the reason? Su Qingzhi was able to accept the other changes in Su Yingxue within a short period. Upted on BX0vel. CM after all, she was Long Shuli's daughter. However, Chu Yihan had forced him to raise his spirits. The 9th prince, Su Yingxue hesitated, considering whether to disclose her relationship with Chu Yihan. However, sensing her grandfather's cautious gaze, she quickly covered up and said, wasn't it at your request, grandfather, that the 9th prince took care of your granddaughter? Has been taking good care of me. While I did make such a request, he didn't agree at the time. His current attentiveness to you is quite unexpected, Su Qingzhi said, stroking his beard. Besides, I was worried that he would outright refuse, as taking care of a young girl like you would be inconvenient. That's why I specifically mentioned taking care of the Marquise manor. Su Yingxue was startled. So, grandfather, you meant the Marquise manor. Chu Yihan had openly stated during his first visit that her grandfather wanted him to take care of her. This revelation shocked her. He had ulterior motives. He's so cunning and scheming. He had his eyes on me so early, Su Yingxue thought. How strange. Didn't the 9th prince say so? Su Qingzhi was puzzled. No. The 9th prince didn't say anything. He had been silently plotting against her, luring her into his trap step by step. The ninth prince is inscrutable. You're just a 3-year-old, yet has already experienced in battle. His noble status, remarkable achievements, and the burdens he carries are beyond ordinary comprehension. Now that I've returned, there's no need for you to trouble him further after I thank him, Su Qingzhi reassured, patting Su Yingxue's hand. Grandfather, do you not like the ninth prince? But didn't you ask him to take care of me because you saw his strength? Su Yingxue bit her lip, growing concerned. Chapter 555. Chu Yihan's determination. It's not a matter of whether one like him or not. In terms of ability alone, he is the only person in my life that I admire. However, the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility and risk. He wields too much power, and as long as He's around, the Emperor's throne is never secure. Ultimately, He's a dangerous man. Our Su family should steer clear of the turmoil of the imperial family. It's especially wise for you, as a girl. Su Qingzhi's tone was laden with concern and seriousness. But with all that had happened between Su Yingxue and Chu Yihan recently, she couldn't possibly explain it to her grandfather in such a short time. And her grandfather probably wouldn't understand her relationship with Chu Yihan so quickly anyway. So she decided to keep it hidden for now and find an opportunity to tell her grandfather after the family banquet. I understand, grandfather. Don't worry, she said, pressing her lips together. Only after confirming that Su Qingzhi had fallen asleep did Su Yingxue return to her room. She had been preoccupied with Su Qingzhi's words, so she was a bit distracted and didn't even notice Chu Yihan sitting there. She walked towards the soft couch with her head down. When she was almost in front of Chu Yihan, he suddenly pulled her into his arms. Your Highness, why are you here? Su Yingxue exclaimed in surprise. Chu Yihan's handsome brows furrowed. When he was displeased, the room felt as cold as ice. Forget about me now that you have your grandfather. I haven't visited for a few days, and this is how you greet me. Chu Yihan's voice was icy. But Su Yingxue didn't have time to worry about his mood. She quickly jumped out of his embrace and went to check the door. After confirming that her grandfather was asleep, she sighed in relief. What if your grandfather finds me here? Chu Yihan raised an eyebrow. Upted on BX0vel. CM it would be serious. Su Yingxue didn't dare to mention that her grandfather had forbidden her from interacting with Chu Yihan. But Chu Yihan had waited for her until late at night. Seeing him like this, she couldn't bear it. She hugged him and rubbed her face against his chest. Grandfather and your Highness haven't seen each other for a long time. If he knew you were in my room, he would blame me. Blame you? Chu Yihan's eyes turned dark. I should have gone to propose to old General Su on the day he was outside the city. Su Yingxue was speechless. Please don't, she thought. She didn't dare to tell Chu Yihan about her grandfather's warning to stay away from him. Chu Yihan had put in a lot of effort to bring her grandfather back earlier. Now that he knew, he wouldn't feel good about it. She could only pretend to be shy and playfully punch Chu Yihan's chest. I hate you. Your Highness is so eager to propose. Do you have some ulterior motive for me? She rarely acted coquettishly, but her tender voice made Chu Yihan's heart skip a beat, and his breathing quickened. Chu Yihan's body was filled with a desire to press her down on the bed and punish her ruthlessly. However, he could not bear to see her watery eyes. She was delicate after all. Chu Yihan coughed heavily and regained his composure. What do one want from you? Your heart belongs to me, and soon, you will too. Really? Su Yingxue pouted. Chu Yihan's calm demeanor impressed her. As expected of the most powerful imperial uncle in the entire Great Qing dynasty, Chu Yihan gently pushed Su Yingxue away and headed back to the prince's mansion. Chapter 556. I didn't arrange for you to meet the old general. Before leaving, Su Yingxue still kissed his cheek reluctantly. Chu Yihan's expression was cold as he walked out, but the corners of his mouth unconsciously curved. Inside the ninth prince's mansion, The people who had already rested began to count the gifts in the boxes according to Chu Yihan's instructions. The boxes, which filled the 2 courtyards, were all the betrothal gifts Chu Yihan had prepared for Su Yingxue. Outside the study, servants were counting the gifts. Inside the study, Mo Qi and the old steward were with Chu Yihan. Chu Yihan held a long list of gifts in his hands. If it weren't for Mo Qi holding it, it would have fallen to the ground. Chu Yihan's handsome brows were still tightly knitted. Isn't this betrothal gift a bit too small? The old steward almost sprained his ankle as he stood on the flat ground. Your Highness, this gift list is 3 times more than when the emperor married the empress. Still too little. There wouldn't be a second mansion in the entire Great Qing dynasty that could write such a gift list, right? Even if it were the emperor, if he took it out at once, he would have heartache for a long time. Their Highness found it too little. Upted on BX0vel. CM Mo Qi was more intelligent. He was used to his master's romantic gestures and would say, Your Highness, I feel that adding more will burden the future princess. Not only does the Marquise Manor not have such a large space to store things, but old General Su's integrity is noble. He will let the princess bring back all these betrothal gifts as dowry. At that time, it will tire the princess out. Chu Yihan instantly made a decision. If that's the case, there's no need to add more. Wait for my order and send it to the Marquise Manor immediately. Yes, Your Highness. The old steward went to prepare. Only Mo Qi asked a very crucial question. Has Your Highness agreed with the future princess? When is Your Highness going to propose marriage? Chu Yihan had been busy preparing for the marriage proposal for a long time, but old General Su had yet to meet Chu Yihan. Did Miss Su not have any plans? Su Yingxue sneezed hard on the bed. She suspected that someone was cursing her. Chu Yihan's expression was grave. Old General Su didn't see me after he returned to the Marquise Manor. At night, Su Yingxue's behavior was also a little strange. She avoided mentioning the matter of him meeting old General Su. When he was in the Marquise Manor, he had been fooled by Su Yingxue. But now that he thought about it, it must be that old General Su has been away from home for too long and just wants to reunite with his family. Mo Qi felt that this matter was very reasonable. Chu Yihan was skeptical. Perhaps so. However, he had to understand old General Su's attitude towards him. After Su Yingxue was done with the clinic, she set the family banquet for 3 days later. She invited her 3 uncles and aunt to bring their children back to the residence for a reunion. The family was happy and harmonious. She had also sent an invitation to the prince's mansion of Yong'an County, but she had asked Deputy General Su Wei, who was by her grandfather's side, to send the invitation. She had caused trouble in the prince's mansion of Yong'an County a few times, so it was inevitable that the other party would resent her. However, Su Wei represented his grandfather. No matter how deep the regional prince's mansion's hatred towards her was, they could not dare to disobey his grandfather's orders. Su Wei sent the invitation to the regional prince's mansion. Chu Xiaotian received him very politely and solemnly promising, 3 days later, one will personally bring Highness back to the Marquise Manor to visit the old general. Su Wei cupped his hands and said, The old general is at home and is waiting for your highness. It's just that. Why don't one see the princess? Before he came here today, Su Qingzhi asked him to check on Su Han. Chu Xiaoshan's eyes darkened, but there was a faint smile on his handsome face. Highness has not recovered from her surgery and has been resting in bed. It's not convenient for her to come out and meet people. 111 bring her back in 3 days. Chapter 557. Please save the miss. When Su Wei heard this, he smiled and took his leave. Just after he departed, Yihan, who was pouring water for Su Han, caught sight of him. Her eyes sparkled with hope. Miss, look. Isn't that person wearing armor from the general manor? Could it be that thief come to rescue us, miss? She was filled with excitement, tears almost welling up in her eyes as she looked at Su Han's current suffering. However, there was no light in Su Han's eyes. She resembled a precious jade buried in the rubble, still mesmerizingly beautiful, yet shrouded in the darkness of the regional prince's mansion. Yihan, sent by Qingzhi to attend to Su-Han, cried and choked out, "Miss, you were raised in the Marquise manor since childhood, pampered and sheltered. When have you ever endured such hardship? Moreover, you've just undergone surgery, and your wounds haven't even healed yet." After emptying the dirty water, Su-Han's lovely face remained indifferent. "Enough talk. Let's get back to work. Miss." Yihan anxiously stomped her foot, putting down the basin and moving to chase after Su Wei. She shouted after him, "Save Miss, General, please save Miss. Seize her for me." Chu Xiaotian waved his hand, and Yilan was quickly apprehended and brought before him. Chu Xiaoshan's typically refined face darkened. "Did Su-Han instruct you to seek help?" His menacing expression caused Yihan to tremble involuntarily. She hurriedly shook her head. "No, Miss didn't let me seek help. It's just that one couldn't bear to see Miss suffer, wretched servant. Upted on BX0vel." CM Before she could finish her sentence, Chu Xiaotian forcefully kicked her, and then issued a cold command. "Men, take her out and sell her." "Yes, Your Highness." The steward came with his men to drag Yihan away. "Hold on." Su-Han set the basin aside. Despite finishing her menial task, she still exuded the grace of a noblewoman before Chu Xiaotian. Her voice rang out clear and firm. "Yihan is my servant, a member of the Su family. Her indenture belongs to the Su family, and Your Highness has no authority to sell her." Su-Han glanced at Yihan and instructed, "Yihan, rise. Let's return to our duties." Yihan wiped her tears, swallowing her grievances. She broke free from the steward's grasp and complied, "Yes, Miss." "Su-Han, halt right there." Chu Xiaotian grabbed her shoulder, yanking her towards him roughly. "Su-Han, why do you pretend to be so noble? Weren't you angry and resentful towards me? Let me tell you, that person who just left is a trusted aide of your grandfather from the Marquise manor. Your grandfather sent him to inform me that in 3 days, I will escort you back to the Marquise manor for a banquet. Your grandfather intends to reunite the family and subtly remind me to treat you well. I senti that so?" Your Su family consists solely of military generals, and yet you think to prop yourself up and stand above me just because of your military achievements. Su-Han knew she couldn't break free from his grasp and chose not to argue. Instead, she remained composed and responded, "Your Highness, you're mistaken. Grandfather has been away for a long time and simply wishes for a family reunion. If you don't wish to attend, you needn't. Not attend? If one don't attend, then I'll send you back to your parents' home to complain, and let your ruthless sister, Su Yingxue, attack the regional prince's mansion and cripple me, won't I? With the added pressure from the 9th imperial uncle, will your Su family then seek to dethrone me?" Chu Xiaoshan's words dripped with scorn. Initially, Su-Han had no intention of arguing with him, but seeing his persistence regarding the Su family, her delicate features turned icy. "It's merely an invitation to a family banquet. Why does Your Highness care so much? Are you torturing me, or are you torturing yourself?" Chapter 558. He was unwilling to let Su Yingxue off just like that. "You fear the Su family's power, harbor resentment towards my sister, yet cannot direct your anger towards them. Highness is already doing something to let Your Highness vent your anger. What more does Your Highness want? What more do I want? Su-Han, who gave you the right to speak to me in such a tone?" Chu Xiaotian couldn't help but push her forcefully to the ground. He felt a burning sensation on his face. His status and dignity had been trampled by the Su family and Su-Han. "Your Highness, Highness knows that Yingxue has embarrassed and made you feel uncomfortable. You can punish me however you want. 3 days later, one will accompany you to the family banquet and face my family. One will not let my family know anything about it. One hope that Your Highness will have some self-respect for what has happened in the manor. Don't trap yourself for something that is not worth it. I will become a stranger to you." Su-Han sighed heavily and took Yihan back to the basin to do the dirty work again. Seeing Su-Han take Yihan away, the housekeeper wanted to ask, "Your Highness, are you still selling this maid?" "Get lost." Chu Xiaotian roared angrily. The butler was so frightened that he shivered and quickly disappeared. Chu Xiaotian shut himself in the study gloomily. A dark shadow was observing the change between him and Su Han. Seeing Chu Xiaoshan's anger, it turned around and went to Minute Zhuo's courtyard. Minute Zhuo was injured by Chu Yihan. Not only did she break her leg, but her internal organs were also damaged. Even the imperial physician in the palace had a headache when he saw her injuries. Madame Sheng and the old regional prince had doted on her since she was young, and now they were so distressed that they wiped their tears every day. Madame Sheng even cursed Su Yingxue's ancestors. That bitch Su Yingxue. She would die a horrible death in the future. Die a horrible death. All right, madam, don't say any more. It's useless to say more. The old regional prince shook his head repeatedly. Although his heart ached for Minute Zhuo, he was a reasonable person. He looked at his daughter who was in pain on the bed and blamed himself. One didn't discipline Minute Zhuo properly. If she wasn't so arrogant, she wouldn't have ended up like this. With her body, how can she get married in the future? Putting aside the fact that the incident between her and Su Yingxue had spread throughout Jiangdu City and how damaging it would be to her reputation, which noble family's wife would not be healthy? Minute Zhuo had broken her leg and suffered a serious injury. Which noble family would want her in the future? Tears streamed down the old regional prince's face. He had only sighed for a while when Madame Sheng flew into a rage and shouted, "What do you mean by saying more is useless? She, Su Yingxue, is only the daughter of a mere marquise manor. This is the regional prince's manor." Minute Zhuo was the county lord personally conferred by the emperor. How much higher was her status than Su Yingxue? All. As a father, instead of standing up for your daughter, you're scolding her. When Madame Sheng thought about how the old regional prince was also a member of the imperial family, yet he was so submissive in front of Chu Yihan that he didn't even dare to breathe loudly, she was furious. She vented all her anger on the old regional prince and punched him twice, telling him to get lost. The old duke had no choice but to distance himself from the mother and daughter. On the bed, Minjia cried so hard that her voice was hoarse. She even shouted, "Mother, I'm not willing to accept this. I'm not willing to let Su Yingxue off just like this. Imperial uncle had been so ruthless to me. I want to break Su Yingxue's legs and turn her into an ugly monster." Good, good, good. My dear daughter, you should recuperate first. When you recover, one will think of a way to avenge you. Madame Sheng gritted her teeth. Wanna gift the story? Try one. Siumenti voted SEND gift 0 comment 2 left chapter 559. Women must submit to him. She even harbored thoughts of killing Su Yingxue. However, she couldn't lay a hand on Su Yingxue. If she couldn't touch Su Yingxue, she would go and target that beloved sister of hers. Madame Sheng went to Su Han's courtyard. There was no one there. Su Jinxuan quietly entered and placed the gift that he had prepared on the bed. He said softly, "Zhuo, are you feeling better?" "All. Brother Jinxuan." Minute Zhuo quickly covered her face with the blanket. "Brother Jinxuan, don't look at me. My face was beaten up by Su Yingxue. I can't face anyone. Be good, I'm worried about you. Let me take a look." Su Jinxuan patiently coaxed Minute Zhuo for a long time. From her face full of hatred, she was now lying in his arms, speaking gently as if she had become a different person. Minute Zhuo leaned into Su Jinxuan's arms. Her eyes were filled with gentleness. She couldn't see the indifference in Su Jinxuan's eyes. After coaxing her, Su Jinxuan whispered a plan into her ear. Minute Zhuo's heart skipped a beat when she heard it. Can one? What if Su Han resists? Moreover, Mother said that your grandfather is back. If your grandfather scolds brother, hell suffer. No matter how great my grandfather's contributions are, he's just a general. Your brother is a regional prince. There's a huge difference in their statuses. How can my grandfather scold your brother? Su Jinxuan's eyes were filled with gentleness. When Minute Zhuo nodded and agreed, a trace of mockery flashed across his eyes. Idiot. Minute Zhuo was not cunning, so she did whatever Su Jinxuan said. She promised Su Jinxuan that she would do it. Su Jinxuan's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice was as sinister as if it came from hell. Su Yingxue, you won't die, but the crime of causing your sister's death is probably a nightmare that you won't be able to escape from in this lifetime, right? Chapter 559. Women must submit to him. She even harbored thoughts of killing Su Yingxue. However, she couldn't lay a hand on Su Yingxue. If she couldn't touch Su Yingxue, she would go and target that beloved sister of hers. Madame Sheng went to Su Han's courtyard. There was no one there. Su Jinxian quietly entered and placed the gift that he had prepared on the bed. He said softly, "Jia, are you feeling better?" "All. Brother Jinxian." Minute Jia quickly covered her face with the blanket. "Brother Jinxian, don't look at me. My face was beaten up by Su Yingxue. I can't face anyone. Be good, I'm worried about you. Let me take a look." Su Jinxian patiently coaxed Minute Jia for a long time. From her face full of hatred, she was now lying in his arms, speaking gently as if she had become a different person. Minute Jia leaned into Su Jinxuan's arms. Her eyes were filled with gentleness. She couldn't see the indifference in Su Jinxuan's eyes. After coaxing her, Su Jinxian whispered a plan into her ear. Minute Jia's heart skipped a beat when she heard it. "Can I? What if Su Han resists? Moreover, Mother said that your grandfather is back. If your grandfather scolds brother, he'll suffer. No matter how great my grandfather's contributions are, he's just a general. Your brother is a regional prince. There's a huge difference in their statuses. How can my grandfather scold your brother?" Su Jinxuan's eyes were filled with gentleness. When Minute Jia nodded and agreed, a trace of mockery flashed across his eyes. "Idiot." Minute Jia was not cunning, so she did whatever Su Jinxian said. She promised Su Jinxian that she would do it. Su Jinxuan's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice was as sinister as if it came from hell. "Su Yingxue, you won't die, but the crime of causing your sister's death is probably a nightmare that you won't be able to escape from in this lifetime, right?" Chu Xiaotian was depressed when he thought of Su Han's words. He felt guilty for Su Han after he drank in the study. He leaned on the desk and muttered softly, "Highness, you are someone who understands me, but why are you a member of the Su family?" He hated it. He hated the Su family who had made him lose face. He hated Su Han too. She used to be such an obedient and considerate woman, but why did she become like this? She was so cold to him. She was so cold that he was scared. When he woke up in the middle of the night and Su Han wasn't by his side, he felt cold all over. He had just finished his drink when there was a commotion outside the door. There was Madame Sheng's scolding and the wailing of women. Su Han and her servant girls were probably troubled by his mother again. Ever since Su Han returned to the prince's mansion and stayed by his side, his mother had been torturing Su Han in every possible way. Su Han was like a lotus flower, pure and innocent even in the mud. Chu Xiaotian stood up with a dizzy head and wanted to save Su Han. However, he looked out of the window and saw Su Han being pressed to the ground by the nannies. Her servant girls were crying, but she didn't shed a single tear. She was in pain. She should be in pain, but why was she so stubborn? "Su Han, if you don't feel pain, you won't beg for mercy or submit to me." Chu Xiaoshan's eyes darkened. What he wanted was Su Han's absolute submission. He wouldn't allow her to resist. His woman must listen to him and submit to him. Chu Xiaotian closed the window and fell into a deep sleep. Madame Sheng gave Su Han a good beating. Seeing that her skin and flesh were torn, she was tired from the beating, so she asked someone to help her back to rest. Chapter 560. Because of Love, I Won't Leave You PDTDD by BX Irovel. CM Su Han and Yihan were covered in wounds. Yihan cried so hard that her voice was hoarse. She lay on Su Han's body and shielded her from many wounds, but Su Han's skin was still bruised and stained with blood. Su Han was drenched in cold water, and she was tortured. It took her a while to stand up. She and Yihan helped each other back to the courtyard. When the servants in the prince's mansion saw her like this, their hearts ached. Some of them remembered Su Han's kindness and sent some hot food and golden-wound medicine to her room. Su Han returned to the door and brought the items in. She was a thoughtful person. She looked at the door where no one could be seen and said with a smile, "Thank you." In the darkness of the door, there were moving footsteps. Yihan entered the room with tears in her eyes. "Miss, you've been hungry for the whole day. Hurry up and eat first. You can eat together." Su Han carried the dishes out. Her fair hands were so thin that only a layer of skin covered her bones, which made people's hearts ache. Yihan ate some with Su Han and was about to apply medicine for her. It was the hardest time to apply the medicine every night. The wound on Su Han's abdomen had long been inflamed, and she had a high fever a few nights ago. Fortunately, Su Han was determined and survived. She also had the golden wound medicine made from the blood-clotting grass that Yingxue had given her. It was very effective in stopping bleeding, diminishing inflammation, and relieving pain. Su Han's body didn't collapse completely because of the medicine. However, every time Yihan finished applying medicine to her, she would sigh. "Miss, when will these days end? Could it be that Miss is going to live a life worse than death in the regional prince's mansion for the rest of her life?" Su Han shook her head. "It won't take long." In her eyes, the light danced. Even if it was just a small flame, it was her hope. Yihan pouted. "I don't think so. Your Highness is so heartless. Not only does he taunt you with his words every day, but he also makes you serve tea and do the dirty and tiring work that servants do. If it wasn't for Miss being generous to others in regional prince's mansion, and the servants not daring to bully and insult, and mostly helping us, how could young Miss Body withstand it? Besides, Madame Sheng comes here every day to scold and beat you. Not only did she scold you, but she also tortured you like this. Miss, do you have any good spots on you? If Master and Madam knew about this, how would their hearts ache?" Yihan cried. "I can't let Father and Mother know about this, and Yingxue too. They'll be sad, and they'll stand up for me. At that time, the conflict between our two families will be even greater." Su Han was understanding. There was no one in her heart who did not hate Madame Sheng. Madame Sheng had never been nice to her despite her compromise. But she knew that Madame Sheng would grow old eventually. The person she wanted to spend the rest of her life with was Chu Xiaotian, not Madame Sheng. As long as she could appease Chu Xiaotian and make him calm down, they would still be husband and wife in the future. She would still live happily with Chu Xiaotian. "Miss, do you love your Highness that much?" Yihan could tell that Su Han wasn't someone without a temper. She could tolerate Minute Jiao County Lord and Madame Sheng until now because she loved Chu Xiaotian and did not have any conflicts with them. But how much love was there for her to endure so much pain and torture? Su Han thought of Chu Xiaotian, and a smile appeared on her pretty face. "I love your Highness very much. Even if he reprimands me now and makes me do hard work, one know that he can't bear it. After some time, when he's no longer angry, he'll still treat me like before, and he'll love me even more." Chapter 561, Su Jinxuan's Plan UPDTDD by BX0vel. CM Yihan sighed. She didn't understand Su Han's thoughts, nor did she understand her relationship with Chu Xiaotian. She could only pray, "I hope everything is as Miss thinks." Su Han smiled. She didn't have confidence in anyone, but after meeting Chu Xiaotian many years ago, she had always been confident in him. Even if she had experienced such despair. "Princess, Princess, your Highness is calling you. Come out quickly." Outside the door, an old woman pounded on it forcefully. Yihan quickly helped Su Han put on her clothes. When they went out, they saw a fierce-looking old woman. Yihan instinctively protected her mistress. "Your Highness ordered the tasks for the princess to be completed today. The princess needs to rest now. You should leave quickly." This old woman looked fierce, and she must be up to no good by coming to Su Han. Yihan immediately tried to chase her away. However, the old woman pushed Yihan aside forcefully and stared at Su Han. I think it's because someone from the Marquise Manor came today that the princess is acting so stubbornly and dares to ignore your highness' orders. Suhan crossed her hands over her abdomen. Even though she was dressed, she still looked dignified and steady. You said your highness called me, but you are from Minute Jo's courtyard. Why are you here to convey your highness' orders? Do you want me to report you to your highness? The old woman's heart skipped a beat. Previously, she knew the princess was powerful, but she didn't expect her to be so sharp even in such dire straits. Suhan knew the old woman was up to no good, so she said a few words to ask her to leave. Unexpectedly, the old woman continued to harass her. Princess is still so arrogant now. I wonder how many more days you can stay as the mistress of the prince's mansion. When your highness has a new lover, he will divorce you. What else do you think you can do? What did you say? Suhan's expression changed. Chu Xiaotian had a new lover. This was impossible. He would not favor anyone else. She had not gone out before. Under the pressure of Madame Sheng, she had arranged 2 concubines for Chu Xiaotian. However, Chu Xiaotian had only gone to see them, completed his task, and given Madame Sheng an explanation before returning to sleep in her room. He once said he was not interested in any concubines and only wanted to be with her. Because of that, Madame Sheng scolded him a lot. Now, this was impossible. Suhan was determined. Yihan picked up the broom and hit the old woman. You are talking nonsense. Our miss will never believe you. Believe it or not, princess. Your highness is in the study at the moment. He has favored the new woman, so princess can wait to be kicked out. Yihan chased out the old woman. Yihan's small face was filled with anger. She turned around and saw Suhan's sad face. She felt a little uneasy. Miss, are you going to watch? Suhan nodded firmly. Yes. Since there were people who wanted to play games with her, why didn't she expose their ugly act? The man she loved would never betray her, even if he was angry with her or tormented her. Suhan went to Chu Xiaoshan's study, which was brightly lit. Suhan knew that Chu Xiaotian would be reading in the study at this hour. She walked closer and was about to knock on the door when she heard an ambiguous voice. Suhan retracted her hand in fear. Inside, what's wrong, miss? Yihan saw that Suhan was frightened and quickly ran to her side. However, the voice inside became even louder. The woman called out in a very charming manner, Your Highness, be gentle. Chapter 562, Completely Dead in the Heart Your Highness? Yihan exclaimed in fear, covering her mouth. She quickly regained her composure and urged Suhan, Miss, why don't we go back first? You must be tired today. If Suhan continued to listen to the voice inside, she might break down. However, Suhan stood still and refused to move. No matter how Yihan tried to persuade her, she refused to leave. Suhan stood there for a long time until the man's steady breathing could be heard. Not long after, the candle burned out. The entire study room was dark. The moonlight fell on Suhan's pretty face, reflecting her tears. Suhan stood in front of the study and cried, Chu Xiaotian, you let me down, Highness, Highness. In his sleep, Chu Xiaotian heard a familiar cry. He struggled to open his eyes but was pulled back by the woman's soft arm. He only realized what he had done when he woke up the next day. Get lost. He shouted coldly at the unfamiliar woman on the bed. The delicate and weak woman wiped her tears. Your Highness was very enthusiastic about me last night. Your Highness kept saying that my waist was very soft and that you liked it very much. Get lost. If you don't get out, one will kill you. Chu Xiaotian pulled out his sword from the bedside and chased them away. His heart was in a mess. When he thought of Suhan, he broke out in a cold sweat nervously. Highness, one didn't do it on purpose. On the day he married Suhan, he promised her that he would never let her down. Even if he was forced to take a concubine, he had never touched another woman. Chu Xiaotian didn't look good all day. He thought that he would bring Suhan back to the Marquise Manor in 2 days, so he went to find her. However, Suhan didn't want to see him and ignored him. She looked at him coldly as if he was a stranger. Chu Xiaotian couldn't stand it anymore. He pulled Su Han to him and yelled at her, "Su Han, what's your attitude toward me? Look at me. Don't just ignore me. You'd better pay attention to me." Su Ailan was forced to look at him, but her eyes were elsewhere. From the initial disappointment, frustration, and despair, to now, coldness. It was her only response to Chu Xiaotian. Chu Xiaotian was furious. "Su Han, don't play tricks with me. One will never bring you back to the Marquise Manor as you wish. Your Highness must bring me back." This was the first thing Su Han said to him today. Her expression was cold. Her eyes, which were originally filled with love for him, were now as cold as two pieces of ice. Chu Xiaotian felt a wave of fear. "Last night, you know? Who told you? Who is so nosy?" Chu Xiaotian wanted to kill someone. Su Han knew that he had betrayed her. Su Han's lips curved into a sneer. "Your Highness, you dare to do it but don't dare to admit it." Could there be someone in the regional prince's mansion who would plot against him? Even though Minute Jiao had intentionally asked her to listen to the conversation yesterday, Chu Xiaotian was unwilling. Who could force him? One did not do that. Chu Xiaotian felt a little ashamed and wanted to explain. "Highness, last night. Your Highness, don't find any excuses. I'm tired of staying in this regional prince's mansion. I'm tired of being a regional princess." Su Han stopped what she was doing and became cold. She was like a different person from before, and her words made Chu Xiaotian tremble in fear. "You don't want to be regional princess, Su Han. Come back." No matter how Chu Xiaotian shouted, Su Han didn't stop. Chapter 563, Odd Fourth Aunt. This day, Chu Xiaotian spent in fear. In the evening, Madame Sheng came to comfort him. "Son, you're a regional prince and serve in the 5 cities military department. How can you allow a woman to control you? If this gets out, what prestige will you have left? How will you command the troops in the future?" "Mother, one know what to do," Chu Xiaotian said, feeling even more frustrated. "Mother is a woman, and I understand a woman's thoughts. It's just a passing fancy. Can Su Han leave you? Can the Su family accept an abandoned wife? Would their Marquise Manor's reputation still stand? The Su family still has several unmarried daughters. Do they still have a future? Su Han is just trying to show off to you, taking advantage of your love and doing as she pleases." It was rare for Madame Sheng not to make a fuss. She spoke calmly to Chu Xiaotian. Chu Xiaotian felt it made sense, nodding in agreement. "Su Han wouldn't dare to leave me. Su Han valued her family's honor. If she left, she would have no good days ahead. So, you don't need to bring her to the family banquet at the Marquise Manor the day after tomorrow. Otherwise, you'll give the Su family a chance to humiliate you. Isn't Su Yingxue insulting you enough? Haven't your sister and one suffered enough?" Madame Sheng started crying as she mentioned her grievances. "Mother, one understand," Chu Xiaotian said. Madame Sheng persuaded Chu Xiaotian, and he decided not to bring Su Han back to the Marquise Manor the day after tomorrow. Madame Sheng left Chu Xiaoshan's study with a sinister smile. She went to tell Minute Jiao about it, and Minute Jiao was so happy she almost jumped up. She smiled smugly. "Brother, you're going to the Marquise Manor alone. Doesn't that mean we can torment Su Han as we please?" "Mother, I want to break her legs and make her suffer as much as I do." "All right, Mother will break her legs for you. The Su family are all bitches." Madame Sheng hugged Minute Jiao with heartache. Outside the window, Su Jinxuan's eyes flashed with coldness. At the Marquis of Marshall South's manor, although it was a family banquet, Su Yingxue had prepared for several days, so it was still very decent. Su Dingwei and Qin Wan were the first to arrive. They were talking to Su Qingzhi in the inner hall. Although Su Qingzhi was serious, he was still happy to see his children. There was a smile on the old man's face. Su Yingxue was welcoming guests at the entrance. Just as she welcomed her third uncle's family into the house, a rather expensive carriage arrived. Looking at the 3-horse carriage, Su Yingxue was puzzled. "Who's in this carriage?" Today, She had only invited the Su family and no one else. These 3 carriages took up half of the street. Only noble families could ride in them. Yihan followed beside Su Yingxue and was also very puzzled. "Miss, could it be that Miss Han is here?" Su Yingxue shook her head. "This is not the carriage of the regional prince's mansion. Cousin is not a flamboyant person." The carriage had stopped at the entrance of the Marquise Manor for a while, but no one came down. The coachman moved the ladder and stood there for a while. Su Yingxue was also standing at the door. After a while, no one got out of the car. Instead, a cold scoff came out. "Such a big Marquise Manor, but there's no one who knows the rules." Su Yingxue smiled. This voice reminded her of something. It was her 4th aunt. Su Yingxue brought Yihan forward and smiled lightly in front of the carriage. "Yingxue, you've been neglectful. Aunt, are you still not planning to get off?" "Humph, your Marquise Manor is now so high that one can't climb down from it. How would I dare to trouble you, the Marquis Manor's legitimate daughter, to invite me down the carriage?" Inside, the woman's lazy voice carried a hint of arrogance. Her tone was still very firm. Chapter 564. It'll be rough when I have to be rough. Su Yingxue couldn't help but find it amusing. Her grandfather had fathered 3 sons and a daughter, each one different from the other. Among them, the most unproductive was her father, but the most affected was her 4th aunt. The other 2 uncles were both influential figures in the court. Her 4th aunt, still unmarried at the time, had her hair shaved off by her grandfather and sent to the temple to become a nun. With that said, it was clear that her aunt was not an ordinary person. Before reaching adulthood, she was already scheming to be involved with princes. However, her grandfather's taboo was against his children participating in the imperial family's succession struggle. So, after discovering her aunt's affair, he sent her to the temple for cultivation. But her aunt's prowess couldn't be underestimated. Even in the temple, she managed to seduce Marquis Chang Yuan, became his concubine, and later forced the Marquis' wife to death, becoming the legitimate wife. Su Yingxue remembered her aunt in her previous life as a typical troublemaker, ruthless and causing chaos in the Marquise Manor. But even after her grandfather's death, she ruled for many years and enjoyed great prestige. Inviting her back this time wasn't Su Yingxue's idea. It was her 4th aunt who, upon hearing the news from somewhere, sent someone to request an invitation. Seeing that her grandfather had passed away in her previous life, Su Yingxue allowed her aunt to pay respects. Now, with the senior Marquis' wife still alive, her aunt wasn't particularly glorious yet. But arriving in 3 carriages and putting on such a grand display was an attempt to show off in front of her grandfather. Su Yingxue wouldn't let her get away with it. Standing her ground, Su Yingxue said aloud, "Aunt, if you don't intend to disembark, please move the carriages aside to avoid blocking the entrance to the Marquise Manor and inconveniencing others." Su Xinlan's expression changed. "Su Yingxue, I'm giving you face, and yet you're so disrespectful to me, your aunt. How am I being disrespectful? Reminding you not to block the way is a kind gesture. Besides, considering your status, riding in these 3 carriages is quite inappropriate. Aunt, it's better to get off the carriage early to avoid being ridiculed." Su Yingxue wore a smile, but her words were sharp, piercing Su Xinlan with every word. After putting on a show for some time, Su Xinlan had no choice but to open the curtains and come down. Seeing everyone laughing at her, she couldn't bear it. She walked up to Su Yingxue, wishing she could shut her mouth. "Su Yingxue, don't think I'm afraid of you. You're just the Marquise Manor legitimate daughter. What's there to be proud of? When I was the daughter of the Marquise Manor, one was 100 times more glorious than you. You're just useless." Su Xinlan trembled as she spoke, her hairpins and pearls swaying. Su Yingxue chuckled, "Aunt knows you're just the Marquis' daughter, while I'm the legitimate daughter of the Marquis. It seems Aunt understands the difference in status." Su Xinlan's face turned pale, stung by Su Yingxue's word. This little girl was exposing her secrets in public. She didn't want to lose face in front of everyone, so she was about to argue with Su Yingxue when Su Yingxue immediately sent someone to drag her into the residence. Chapter 565. Su Han didn't come. Su Yingxue's stunning face bore a subtle warning. Fourth aunt, considering your lineage within the Marquise manor, I haven't prevented your return for the reunion. However, if you fail to show gratitude, I am capable of the same measures grandfather once took. I believe Madame Chang Yuan and the household members would be pleased to see you unable to return. You. Su Xinlan's eyes widened, her heart trembling fiercely. Su Yingxue, despite her young age, possessed a ruthless and unyielding heart. A fierce and menacing expression flickered across her delicate face, nearly causing Su Xinlan to grind her teeth. Su Xinlan stormed into the residence, seething with anger. Su Yingxue, just you wait. Despite the disdainful looks from everyone in the Marquise manor, she was determined to carve out her path and earn their respect, especially her father's. Su Yingxue had waited at the door for quite some time, eagerly anticipating the arrival of Su Han. Su Han had left after her surgery, likely due to her concerns. Unable to understand Su Han's feelings, Su Yingxue refrained from involving herself in matters concerning the regional prince's mansion. However, as the one in charge of the Marquise manor now, it was only proper for her to personally welcome Su Han and her husband, not only to honor Su Han but also to save face for Chu Xiaotian. She hoped that by doing so, Su Han would have a better experience in the regional prince's mansion in the future. Miss, look, the carriage from the regional prince's mansion has arrived. Yihan pointed excitedly ahead. A luxurious carriage, pulled by 4 horses, stood out even more than Su Xinlan's 3-horse carriage, emphasizing the imperial family's prestigious status. Su Yingxue instructed Yihan to bring a ladder, intending to personally greet Su Han. However, when the carriage door opened, Chu Xiaotian emerged first. A hint of disgust flashed in Su Yingxue's eyes, but she had no choice but to welcome Chu Xiaotian. Chu Xiaotian merely exchanged superficial greetings with her, and their mutual dislike was palpable. But as Su Yingxue glanced at the carriage, noticing no one descending, she called out, "Sister?" No response. Frowning, Su Yingxue turned to Chu Xiaotian. "Your Highness, where's my sister?" Chu Xiaoshan's expression turned cold as he wordlessly entered the manor. After inquiring with the coachman, Yihan reported to Su Yingxue, Miss Han never boarded the carriage. She's still in the regional prince's mansion and hasn't come out." A sense of unease settled in Su Yingxue's heart. She retreated to a secluded corner of the manor and summoned Zi Wei. Silently, Zi Wei appeared before her. Su Yingxue instructed him, "Go to the regional prince's mansion, find sister, and assess her situation." Chapter 566. Don't be like fourth aunt. At that moment, seeing that Su Qingzhi hadn't instructed anyone to rise, Su Xinlan, with her sharp tongue, remarked, "Oh, your Highness is truly filial. Despite your noble status, you show such respect to my father. You are truly a paragon of filial piety." Chu Xiaotian raised an eyebrow slightly and glanced at her before replying, "Thank you for your praise, aunt." Being addressed as aunt by your Highness made Su Xinlan extremely proud. She even said to Chu Xiaotian, "Oh, this child is so polite. Get up quickly, get up quickly." As she spoke, she moved to help Chu Xiaotian up. Madame Yin kindly reminded her, "Aunt, father hasn't spoken yet." Su Xinlan's expression changed, and her outstretched hand awkwardly hung in the air. Pretending not to notice Su Xinlan, Su Qingzhi hadn't treated her as his daughter for a long time. To avoid further embarrassment and to save face in front of Chu Xiaotian, Su Xinlan could only turn to Su Dingheng. "Second brother, the Marquise manor is now yours. You should say something. Should your Highness keep kneeling like this?" Su Dingheng silently drank his tea, with Su Qingzhi presiding over them. His voice was always very soft when he spoke. "The Marquise manor wasn't under my control. Su Yingxue was in charge of affairs, and above her was his father. With Su Qingzhi there, he didn't dare to say a word. What else could he do?" Su Xinlan cursed Su Dingheng in her heart for being spineless. Then she turned to Su Dingwei. Brother, your Highness is your son-in-law. You can't ignore him and allow him to kneel. If this gets out, how will Hina behave in the regional prince's mansion? It would have been fine if she hadn't mentioned Su Han, but Su Dingwei was like a lit firecracker as he glared at her and snapped, "It's not your place to tell Hina how to behave. Go back and sit properly." Su Xinlan could only return to her seat dejectedly. Madame Yin, sitting on her right, held her daughter Su Miaoyan's hand and earnestly instructed her, "Miao Miao, you must remember not to be so frivolous. Be careful with your words and actions." Su Miaoyan seemed to understand. She was only 12 years old, her innocent face filled with naivety. "Be careful." Su Miaoyan leaned against her mother and whispered softly, "Mother, don't worry. I won't meddle like aunt." Madame Yin rubbed her head, feeling very relieved. Su Xinlan heard it all but didn't dare to go up and slap the mother-daughter duo. It was all her father's fault. He had kicked her out when she was young and even shaved her head. Now, the whole family looked down on her. Su Xinlan sat at the very back, gritting her teeth and thinking to herself, "I will become the Marquis' wife and be bestowed with a noble title. Then, I'll ruthlessly slap this group of people in the face. Let them all look down on me." Su Qingzhi hadn't given permission, so Chu Xiaotian kept kneeling. After studying him carefully for a moment, Su Qingzhi, although young, seemed steady and much better than his second son. After Su Qingzhi set down his teacup, he spoke lightly, "May I ask your Highness why my granddaughter didn't accompany you?" "Yes, Hina hasn't seen her grandfather for a long time at today's family banquet. She must miss him very much." "Why wouldn't she come?" Qingwan, not seeing her daughter, felt her heart tightening again. She was afraid Su Han was suffering again in the regional prince's mansion. Chu Xiaotian explained slowly, "It's not that I didn't want to bring Hina out, but she's not feeling well." "Hina is not feeling well? What's wrong with Hina?" Qingwan's heart trembled, and she almost cried. Chapter 567, How Dare You Neglect Your Highness? Before, Hina underwent an operation and had not yet recovered. I believe father-in-law and mother-in-law are very clear about this. Back then, it was the two of you who hid it from me and had Hina undergo some kind of operation. Chu Xiaotian's voice was very cold, and there was a hint of blame in his words. Su Dingwei's face turned ashen as he coldly snorted. Qingwan was also furious, but she could not refute such accusations. After Su Han got married, she became part of her husband's family. Chu Xiaotian had the right to blame them for making decisions for Su Han. Why is Hina sick? Why do her parents have to make decisions? Have your Highness thought of how to explain this to me? Su Qingji's dignified voice sounded, causing Su Dingwei and his wife's faces to ease up a lot. Chu Xiaotian, on the other hand, felt a pang of discomfort when Su Qingji brought up the topic. He hadn't investigated the truth behind Su Han's illness yet, but he had heard Su Han shouting that it was his mother and Minute Jiao who had caused it. He knew his mother and sister's temper. Although they were hot-tempered, they wouldn't harm anyone. He thought about it and let it go. But now that Su Qingji asked, Chu Xiaotian responded calmly, "Hina had once accidentally fallen into the water in the residence. At that time, I was busy with official matters in the 5 cities military department and could not return home. However, the family had already hired a doctor for Hina, and she would be cured in a few days." Unexpectedly, Su Yingxue suddenly barged into the residence. She disrupted the tranquility of the regional prince's mansion. If Su Yingxue hadn't interfered, he and Hina wouldn't have reached this point. In that case, was Yingxue the one who was intrusive and harmed Hina? Su Qingji's gaze was like lightning as it landed on Chu Xiaotian, causing him to feel an inexplicable pressure. Qingwan quickly explained, "Father, that's not the case. The situation was urgent at that time. It was me who invited Yingxue to visit and treat Hina. Yingxue saved Hina's life, so you can't blame her for this. We should thank Yingxue." Qingwan's tone was sincere. Even Su Dingwei said, "That's true. Qingzhi naturally wouldn't trust his own family and trust an outsider. He didn't ask Chu Xiaotian to get up. Instead, he said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, when you've thought it through, you can tell me the details." Chu Xiaotian gritted his teeth angrily. Qingzhi was humiliating him. He was a dignified regional prince, and it was respectful for him to bow to him like a junior, but he didn't wake him up. Let him kneel on the ground. Now that he was kneeling, Qingzhi didn't allow him to get up. If he got up himself, he would be disobeying his elders and slapping his face. Chu Xiaotian was filled with hatred. Everyone in the Su family was as detestable as Yingxue. "Old General, the 9th prince is here." Su Wei walked in front of Qingzhi and reported seriously. "The 9th prince?" Qingzhi raised his thick white eyebrows. He was puzzled. Why did Yihan insist on joining in the fun at his family banquet today? It was beyond his expectations, but since he was already here, he could not ask him to go back. He led everyone to welcome them. When he reached the door, he saw Yingxue and Yihan standing together. In the bleak autumn wind, everything was withered and yellow. It was originally a desolate scene, but these two people, one in a red dress and the other in white, were like the collision of ice and fire, passionate and seductive. Both of them had such peerless looks. They were all so ethereal. This scene stunned everyone. Cough. Qingzhi was the first to regain his senses. He walked forward and scolded Yingxue with a stern face. "Nonsense. You didn't even greet your Highness when you saw him, and you're so negligent." Chapter 568. Wasn't it all for Yingxue? Yingxue had never bowed to Yihan before, so she had forgotten about this. She winked at Yihan with a smile in her eyes. In front of everyone, he was a high and mighty Your Highness. Yingxue stood behind her family and stood together with Su Miaoyan. Qingzhi took the lead in the marquise manner and knelt in turn, kowtowing to Yihan. "One greet the 9th prince. Your Highness, all hail." Yingxue and Su Miaoyan were about to kneel as well. Before Yingxue's knees touched the ground, Yihan helped Qingzhi up. "No need for formalities," he said in a clear voice. In this way, Yingxue's knees did not have the chance to land on the ground. She got up easily, but Su Miaoyan, who was beside her, did not stand properly. "Ayo." Yingxue helped her up so that she did not fall. Su Miaoyan's hair was tied in a braid and she mischievously winked at Yingxue. "Thank you, Sister Xue. Don't be polite. Little girl, you've grown so big." Yingxue rubbed her head. Su Miaoyan was the youngest among the many sisters in the Marquise manor, and she was the most clever and cute one. Before they moved out of the marquisdom, the two of them often quarreled. Unfortunately, after her father moved out, this little girl moved away with her third uncle. In her previous life, the Su family declined. This little girl married a rude soldier and didn't live a very happy life. Later on, her husband died and she remarried to a businessman. She didn't have to worry about food and clothing. She was the one with the best ending among her sisters. Su Miaoyan was innocent and naive. She shook the silk on the whip at Yingxue. "Sister, you're already so big, how can I not grow up?" "But..." 9th prince felt sorry for you and didn't let you kneel, but one almost fell. After she finished speaking, she stuck out her tongue and hid behind Madame Yin, giving Yingxue no chance to catch her. Yingxue bared her teeth at her. "Young girl." He would teach her a lesson later. A 12-year-old young girl was mischievous. Qingzhi and Yihan were at the front, and it was unknown what they were talking about. Qingzhi welcomed Yihan into the residence. In the front hall, Chu Xiaotian had already stood up, but Qingzhi had brought Yihan over. His heart sank. He stood rooted to the ground, not knowing whether to leave or move. When Yihan and Qingzhi sat side by side, Yihan glanced at everyone in the hall and said lightly, "What's wrong? Now that you see me, can you not bow?" Chu Xiaotian gritted his teeth. "I wouldn't dare." Yihan was only 5 years older than him, but they were one generation apart. He had to bow to Chu Yihan, and it had to be the same as when he met the emperor. Su Xinlan rolled her eyes. She thought to herself, these are all members of the imperial family and your highness. Chu Yihan doesn't have to make things difficult for Chu Xiaotian, right? She wanted to make her presence known in front of Chu Yihan, and at the same time, she wanted Chu Xiaotian to have a good impression of her aunt. She smiled and said, we're all family. There's no need to be so particular about this, right? As soon as she said that, Su Qingzhi glared at her angrily. How dare you? Who gave you the guts? How dare he offend the 9th prince? Kneel and apologize to your highness. Su Xinlan had always been afraid that Su Qingzhi would get angry, so she immediately knelt. Your highness. Please forgive me, your highness. But where did she go wrong? Chu Xiaotian sneered, old general, you don't have to be so angry. Aunt is right. If you are not a family, imperial uncle would never visit anyone. Why did you know about the family banquet in the Marquise Manor and come to the Marquise Manor? Wasn't it all for Su Yingxue? Chapter 569, My Medical Skills? Chu Xiaoshan's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. If Su Qingzhi, with his aloof and serious temperament, found out about Chu Yihan's relationship with Su Yingxue, who knew how furious he would be? Your highness and the Marquise Manor are naturally one family. Su Yingxue shot Chu Xiaotian a glare. Was he trying to trouble her? Still, in the Marquise Manor? Su Qingzhi was suddenly taken aback. His gaze landed on Chu Yihan and Su Yingxue, and he suddenly realized, were they standing a bit too close? Upon hearing this, Chu Yihan's brows lifted in amusement. Su Dingwei and Qin Wan, too, were momentarily stunned. Was Su Yingxue about to make a public announcement at the family banquet? Su Dingheng tucked his hands into his sleeves, indicating that he knew nothing and didn't wish to hear anything. Su Yingxue showed no fear in front of everyone, but she was slightly worried about disappointing Chu Yihan. Approaching Chu Xiaotian, she looked down at him kneeling. Your Highness calls 9th Price Imperial Uncle. Isn't Your Highness a member of our Su family? Then what about 9th Prince? Ha! Su Xinlan sneered. I thought you'd come up with something. Father scolded me before. Father, listen now. Isn't your granddaughter trying to cozy up to the 9th Prince? You have quite the nerve. Aunt, it's you who has the nerve, isn't it? Sister Xue spoke the truth, but what kind of relationship do you have with your highness? Why did you help him up for no reason? Su Miaoyan's young voice rang out clearly. Though young, her words were precise. Su Xinlan's face turned red instantly. She turned around to look at the clever Su Miaoyan, seeing that her third brother was not there, she raised her hand to slap her. You impudent little, or, Grandpa, save me. Su Miaoyan leaped into Su Qingzhi's arms, crying out for help. Madame Yin, always dignified, stood up with a serious expression. Aunt, who are you calling impudent? Calling you out for the bast you birthed. Su Xinlan never adhered to rules, especially not in the Marquis of Changxin's manner. Returning home, she continued in the same manner. Unable to bear it any longer, Su Qingzhi ordered coldly, Su Yingxue, bring out the family whip. Yes, Grandpa, Su Yingxue answered. Yilan fetched the vine whip. Su Yingxue twisted Su Xinlan's arm, forcing her to kneel. Raising her hand, she delivered a fierce slap. All. Su Xinlan's scream echoed painfully, tears streaming down her heavily made-up face. Su Qingzhi held Su Miaoyan and glared at her coldly. If you spoke impudently again, you would have been kicked out of the Marquise Manor. The Marquise Manor wouldn't tolerate your insolence. Father, Su Xinlan bit her lip, feeling aggrieved. As an elder, she had been slapped merely for scolding a little girl. How could she face this? When Su Yingxue helped her up, she whispered in her ear, Aunt, if you dare to misbehave again, I'll go to Chongyuan Marquise Manor tomorrow and cure the Marquise wife. Su Yingxue, you dare. Su Xinlan trembled in fear. A cold smile played on Su Yingxue's lips. I can save Consort Xiong and cure cousin. Do you want to test my medical skills, aunt? Don't. Su Xinlan's legs shook. She immediately restrained her arrogance and impudence, obediently returning to her seat. She dared not let Su Yingxue treat that old woman. She was just waiting for her rise to prominence. If Su Yingxue cured her, wouldn't all her years of hard work be in vain? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.